Okay. I don't know. They're near perfect, near word for word. And she's fast.
Did you need an agenda? Oh.
I believe that there was just housekeeping. There's some water, ice water over there, and coffee, if anybody's interested in that, with a few little sugar cookies here and there on the table. Bethany.
It does seem a little silly that fire you wouldn't, but this is the best way to share. We're not gonna run really on this scenario, but thank you for the orientation.
I finished getting the lists together here. Okay, we're at about 4 after. I think we'll go ahead and get started with introductions and roll call. We'll start with the in-room folks. My name is Kelly Sheen, District Manager at the Trinity County Resource Conservation District and Collaborative Facilitator. I'm going to pass to Denise.
Good morning, I'm Denise Wesley, the GS Manager for the TCRCD.
Good morning, I'm Tara Jones. I am the District Ranger for the South Fork Management Unit and the Trinity River Management Unit.
Good morning, my name is Mark Goshorn. I'm Detailed District Ranger for the NRA out of Shasta Lakes.
I'm Terry Sheen, concerned citizen.
And Sheen, longtime concerned citizen.
Tom March, landscape specialist for Caltrans.
Jill Cox, Board of Supervisors.
Travis Finch, Velocity.
Randy Paris, I'm the Forestry and Fuel Program Director at the Watershed Center.
Jim Spear, co-facilitator for the collaborative.
Jerry Cousins, collaborative member.
Great, and I'll go through everybody that's online. I believe that's everybody in the room. Okay, Susan and Ross.
Hello. Collaborative members.
Susan Ross Molyneux, thank you and welcome. Bob Morris.
Morning, Trinity County Collaborative.
Arnold Whitridge.
Hello, here, collaborative member.
Keith Greenwood.
Yeah, push the right button. Keith Greenwood, Sierra Pacific Industries, Weaverfield District Manager.
Great. Larry Glass.
Hey, Larry Glass here, SAFE and North Coast Environmental Center.
Great. Susan and Joseph Bauer.
Here.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Okay, Carol Fall.
Carol Fall, likewise, longtime collaborative member. Sorry.
Ren Winter.
Forester with Crawl Creek Timber and Trinity River Lumber.
Thank you, Ren. Dave DeLang.
Dave DeLang, Trinity Public Utility District Vegetation Program Manager.
Welcome, Dave. Let's see, Ren. Jennifer Mata.
Good morning, Jennifer Mata, Field Manager, Reading BLM, and my apologies for not being there in person with y'all. My 12-year-old broke his arm, and so a week ago while he was getting a cast, apparently I was getting COVID from urgent care.
Oh, boy.
So it's better that I'm not there in the room with y'all, but good morning.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here, Jennifer. Sorry to hear about that. Let's see. Jesse Poor?
Yes, sir. Volunteer with the WRTC.
Well, welcome. Kristen Lark.
Good morning, Kristen Lark, District Ranger for the Mad River Ranger District, Six Rivers National Forest, and in solidarity with Jennifer because I too have COVID. So, so I'm not there.
Sorry you couldn't be here, Kristen. Okay, Chris Cole.
Good morning. I'm Chris Cole, the District Conservationist for the Natural Resource Conservation Service. Tiffany Perez, Conservation Planner, is also here with me.
Very good. Thanks, Chris. Xander Winter.
Morning. I'm a forester with the Watershed Center.
Thanks, Xander. And Bethany Llewellyn.
Good morning, Bethany Llewellyn, Trinity County RCD Forest Health Program Manager.
And as far as I can tell, that's everybody. Did I miss anybody? Okay, I think that's got it. I will turn over the responsibility for running the meeting to Jim.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Good morning, everyone. Great to see such a good turnout this morning. We do have a fairly full agenda and do appreciate some of the guest speakers that we've asked to join us this morning. So we are going to start with an agenda check. Anybody have any additional items or questions or comments on the agenda before we launch?
I have one.
Jerry?
Unless Forest Service has an update, I'd like to put on the Molyneux Bike Trail.
Okay. Anybody else?
Excuse me, I meant if it's going to be covered in a Forest Service report, it doesn't need to be on the agenda.
Were you gonna be able to report out on that bike trail? We had talked about it, I know.
Yeah, just a little bit. We'll have a couple
We'll
notes.
cover it in your report. Okay, very good.
We'll keep it on the agenda.
Okay. All right, anything else? Very good. Any additions, revisions on the collective memory minutes from our last meeting in July? Seeing none, we'll move on to public input. Any members of the public have anything to share with us this morning?
Just wanted to keep up.
All right. Okay, we are going to start off here with a topic that was raised several meetings ago, and just for those of you that may not have been there at that meeting and may benefit from some recollection here, the concern was raised just about tree mortality and just the volume expanse of standing dead timber from a host of issues: fire, drought, bugs, disease, all the above. The geography was principally kind of focused on Highway 299 corridor, probably from Weaver, or the top of Buckhorn there, all the way down through Douglas City, maybe through Weaverville. So that was kind of the initial concern that was expressed. As we know, tree mortality is probably a countywide issue. But we're going to start that conversation just with that focus geography in mind, kind of along that Highway 299 corridor. That is one that seems to be pretty visible. We all see it frequently as we go back and forth to Reading. So I did reach out to several land managers in that region, in that specific piece of geography. And so we've got 4 presenters today, and principally what I've just asked them to represent this morning to kind of give a report on is kind of what that issue looks like on the lands that they're responsible for, and from a management perspective, kind of their assessment of it. And then, are there any short-term, long-term plans to address it? And so, again, these won't be lengthy, in-depth presentations. They'll be pretty short and sweet. And hopefully this kind of gets some of that dialogue going. I suspect this is an issue that we can continue to discuss in future meetings, but hopefully this kind of gets the ball rolling in terms of the conversation. And again, appreciate those that are here and able to contribute to that conversation. So to start us off here with this tree mortality presentation, we are going to go to Dave DeLang. Dave is the I'm not sure I've got your title actually correct, Dave. With you're with the Trinity PUD, and veg management specialist is what I have here, but you can certainly correct me if I got that wrong. So Dave, you ready to take it away and kind of give the PUD's perspective on the issue?
There we go. Vegetation program manager. You can call me whatever you want to call me. That's fine. I don't know if it's so much of a presentation. I just wanted to open dialogue with everyone that is affected by this. I have a small, if I could share screen here.
You can.
Let me try that. And this is, everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay. So, the tree mortality and the forest health here. This is in the corridor here with within Trinity, at the Trinity River and Highway 3 and 299, I believe. Some of this is Forest Service land. Some of it is BLM possibly, but SPI also. And you can see the amount of dead firs and pine. There's a healthy looking forest out in South Fork there. We've almost doubled our budget trying to remove and take hazard trees off of our corridors around the 60 kV line running to Hayfork and also throughout the system. I'm just going to pause that right there. This is pretty typical of this forest right now, and I don't see it slowing down any in the next couple of years. I think the drought has really taken hold, and this is a line running through Kinney Camp here. There's Forest Service and SPI here, and it's a pretty daunting task to try to manage these lands with the amount of dead trees here. So again, this is right along the Trinity River in Douglas City. You can see these pockets of dead trees. There's across from Indian Creek, that whole hillside is pretty much, I'd say 70% conifers are dead or dying. Again, this is one of our corridors crossing Readings Creek Road, and you can see the amount of dead, diseased, and dying trees along here that impact our power lines. And yeah, like I said, it's been quite overwhelming in the last couple of years. We're spending close to $2 million trying to remove these, and we'll go into an area and take whatever hazard trees are out there, and 3 weeks later there'll be a new pocket of dead there. So again, this is a right-of-way corridor. Just the tree health it's rough, and it's not small trees. They can typically be up to 5-foot diameter trees that are affected. anyway, that's that's the gist of it. I just was going to open some dialogue if anybody had any questions or and just what everybody else is seeing or what their thoughts are on what to do.
All right, well, thank you, Dave. Any questions? We do have a little bit of time here.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Jerry.
So I'm wondering, Dave, and maybe to all the other presenters, are any of the trees that you're putting down getting to a sawmill being used? Is there any value to them, first of all? And then if there is, are they getting into a sawmill?
Depending on the property owner, there is to get them to the mill, they need to most likely have to get them to the mill, you need an exemption from CAL FIRE. There's a utility exemption form that can be filled out. We did a couple of those on private property. Forest Service trees are, bucked and limbed and left. There's a few, but for the most part, no.
Right.
I can address that with PG&E. They have identified 7,000 trees. Now, keep in mind when they say 7,000 trees, they count every single tree and bush, weirdly. But we will be getting that removed from the forest under a settlement sale.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it's where there's concentrations, it's not lost on us that you can mitigate a hazard, a vertical hazard, and create a horizontal hazard by leaving all those fuels out on the landscape, which we see in places where we leave stuff on the ground like that. So we are working to get that stuff removed wherever we can. And some of the ground, as you all know, is inoperable, but where it is operable, we want to get that stuff off the landscape.
Okay, any other questions for Dave? Seeing none, thank you very much, Dave, for that. Next up, we've got Tom March. Tom, thank you for making the trip up this morning from Caltrans. Tom is the District 2 Edge Program Manager.
So I have, some of you already know who I am. I work 7 counties throughout the North State for Caltrans as their consultant for vegetation management, certified arborist, pest control advisor. I coordinate with local maintenance offices or stations. We have one here in Weaverville, Hayfork, Trinity Center, and when they work together. They collaborate to do what their tasks may be, be it vegetation, roadway safety improvement, winter weather, inclement weather operations, or post winter weather or storm damage, whatever it may be. So they need to coordinate their efforts because of staffing issues. And so at this time of year, they're doing a lot of road work. So they'll take Trinity Center, Hayfork, and work with Weaverville to do their roadway maintenance, their replacement of guardrail, whatever it may be. At this time of year, we're not doing much. We've gone past to the preventative springtime mowing, those types of things. And then now they're into roadway work, roadway maintenance, and then they'll do that until the end of fire season, which is normally, we all know around Thanksgiving. It's getting better now this year as we've had some rains. And so that's when we'll do our tree mortality operations. We do have a tree crew besides the individual maintenance stations, and they are the ones coordinating some of the throughout the year. They're doing their hazard tree removal, dead tree hazard removal throughout the district, throughout the counties, and they prioritize working with the individual maintenance stations. So with that though, I'm very similar to what Dave has to deal with, and so we have state right of way, which is either we own it in fee or it's an easement. And if you look at it, a parcel map of an area, it's just one big puzzle of little odd shapes. So a lot of times there's that assessment of like, okay, who owns the tree, who's responsible for that hazard risk assessment. You know, is it ours? Is it Forest Service, BLM? Is it a private owner? Will that tree affect the roadway in such way? You know, either impact it by falling or either, you know, with fire management. So that's one of the that's one of the starting issues. Then we needed you know, well, that dictates the responsible and the authority, you know, legal authority to manage that tree. So we are planning, we've done our tree inspections. We are planning winter operations, fall operations for removals, and that'll go into spring. And then I don't know how much they have calculated right now. I did not bring what we did last year. I forgot to bring that, sorry. But that's pretty much the basics of what we're doing. You know, there's trees all over the place. We're focused on those individual trees. There's not one particular project that we have. We do have complications, logistics, like I said, with labor, as well as with CAL FIRE. CAL FIRE used to be our go-to, but we've had since AB 901, I think, they had early release. And then also our contract with CAL FIRE has not been renewed. And I'm kind of disappointed with that, really frustrated with that. And that's a headquarters issue. But they used to be a great source of you know, of labor to be able to mitigate these hazards, these trees, to get them on the ground, to prevent that spread of disease or whatever it may be. And then also another source of labor was our CCCs, and they were great to implement. That also is being reduced. Our budget and our time schedule to use them has been reduced, so that creates complications. So it's a constant juggle, but like I said, it's a long-term assessment. Assess the area, who owns the parcel, who owns the tree. That's one of the things. Also, we might have the land, we might have the state right of way, we might own the land, but in the deed, when things were sold, when things were, you know, 68, when a lot of the roads were done, or even earlier, there was the agreement with the original landowner. The original landowner kept the rights to the trees, but sold the land. It's kind of like mineral rights, I guess. I don't know. So that also creates complications where we have to do some you know, get into the details and find the ownership. So it's complicated, but we are interested in partnering. As always, we've tried our best to work and coordinate with RCD. If there's an opportunity, if there's projects, offer encroachment permits to allow you into the right away, working with our designers, working with our encroachment officers to guide you on proper traffic control, safety, as well as with Caltrans policies that might be different than a little bit extra level of authority, a little extra level of environmental protection, maybe to follow, making sure that agreements are followed. But yeah, we're always interested in collaborating and working together and trying to have some connectivity with these projects, so that if there is a problem, that there is a line of defensible space of proper safety from falling trees or whichever. So that's pretty much my presentation there. Does anybody have any questions for Caltrans or myself?
I know that I'll start out. This topic was originally brought up by Tom Wells, and he brought up two specific things. One was the mortality that we're seeing, like, for example, between Weaverville and Douglas City, you know, like along the highway corridor, you can just, it's all over the place, especially closer to Douglas City specifically. And then the other piece had to do with all the trees that had gotten dropped that were is sitting inside the car fire footprint up towards, you know, top of Buckhorn, that were just dropped all over the place and then left. So I think part of one of his questions was, so there's standing dead issues that we have from the mortality, but then the biomass that's being dumped on the ground along the highways where we know fire starts are most likely to occur. Is there going to be something done, you know, with that biomass?
I think a lot of it has to do with risk management on. I was not in a part of the car fire cleanup, and that was a decision that was made by the construction that it is, you know, that was acceptable. That was an acceptable option, subjectively. So, like I said, standing mortality, we might not have the authority to do anything about those trees because they're not ours. If all trees that were assessed during the post fire that were in our authority were managed, I felt other locations, other fires, we've had disagreements with removal of trees. I see a tree affected by fire, somebody else might see the same tree and go, that's going to live. I say it's not going to live, or it's the risk management of, does it have a potential to fail, and does it have the potential to impact a target? So that's a subjective opinion where there's constant conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it might have been a live tree post fire,
right?
2 years later, 3 years later, stressed, drought stress, succumb to mortality.
Mm-hmm.
And then here we are. So
yeah, I think we saw a lot of that with car fire, because there was that initial push, not unlike what was happening down on 36 during August Complex, where, you know, like immediately after the fire, you know, there was a whole lot of removal that happened. Buckhorn was the same sort of thing. But then, you know, now 2 years later, 3 years later, earlier this year, I'd even say there was, you know, they just then dumped a whole lot of those trees that probably were in that situation that had been impacted by the fire, but were still alive at the time, so they didn't remove them.
Right.
But now we're kind of just littering the highway.
Right.
You know,
Can I jump in here real quick?
Yes.
We partnered with Caltrans on a couple different zones, Little Creek area, also I think it's called Deep Gulch over on Highway 3 going towards Hayfork, where we had overlapping trees sandwiched in between our 60 kV right of way and the highway. And they did the traffic control and equipment, and we did the falling, and they were able to skid these logs to areas where the public could get to them. I think that was pretty. They've been doing that elsewhere, and I think it's a great asset to the community also for firewood. That it is an opportunity to get some of that fuel out of the right of ways. And I mean, we can't do it everywhere, but where it's feasible, that's what we've been trying to do.
Dave, are you, just real quick, regarding that, when those trees are coming down and then being left for what are affectionately referred to as wood rats, and basically removing them, are they being mobilized to some place where they can be, you know, more easily decked and accessible, or just?
Yes, they're getting dragged down the road to a wider, yes. So they are getting moved within the setup, you know, within the traffic setup. So, and brush sometimes is chipped and broadcast, sometimes is piled and burned later. It depends on. I mean, this is just strictly where it works. So, but it is happening.
I I'm just not sure if folks are aware, but the forest health staff at the Forest Service, they're kind of a regional organization that support the National Forest System. They've developed this great evaluation tool for fire cause mortality to help you quantify dying trees after a fire. And so you can assess the impacts to the tree, and you at least have, they've taken the research, they've done a lot of monitoring, and they've put it all together into this evaluation tool. So you at least have some fairly rigorous, scientific backup for your assessments. So it's publicly available, and I know have found it extremely helpful in the post-fire environment for identifying essentially dying trees or trees likely to die. It's not saying they're absolutely going to die, and you can kind of calibrate your assessment depending on, I want to take a conservative approach, or I really want to make sure I'm getting all the dying trees. So there's this thing called probability of mortality.
Right.
Of course, a dead tree is a dead tree, so there's no 100% probability, which sometimes happens in the language. Yeah, you can quantify the likelihood.
Right, and just like with hazard tree assessment as an arborist, as trained, that's the same. And not only are you assessing for the mortality of the tree, but you assess the location of the tree, and that needs to be brought into that conversation, because our maintenance staff is one thing, post-construction is another, where they have full, huge army of equipment and budget, and they're focused on one task. Our maintenance, hey, we got a drunk driver went over the edge, we have to provide traffic control, there's this issue, that issue may happen, so they get pulled all the time. So yeah, I do appreciate that mortality assessment, but as well as we need to do that, plus the location. And like I said, it's who you're talking with, and someone will, well, it's going to grow back. Well, maybe it will, maybe it won't. But if it doesn't, it's going to be a huge task to handle by our maintenance staff, who also have much more to handle as well. So I get that aspect. I understand the lop and scatter issue of the biomass, and that is handled as well as with the great task ahead of us of just like, there's thousands of trees out there. Do we clean all this up and not address the hazard tree that's reaching over, or is lop and scatter, drop it, acceptable, we move on to the next one? We're trying to manage with our available workforce, and this is our best option.
All right, before I go to Tara, we do have some new participants that have joined us here, so let's get them logged in here. So who do we have?
Heidi.
Heidi, you with us? Not seeing her, but I know Kenneth did not.
Kenneth is on.
He's joined late. Kenneth, you with us? Maybe everybody's on mute.
They're on mute.
Is Range, is that Heidi?
That's Range. And then there was an R. Fogarty.
R. Fogarty. Oh,
hello, everybody. Ryan from the U.S. Fish for My Life out of Wairika. It's normally Christine Jordan who attends these, but she had some other priorities that she couldn't step away from today. So I'm just kind of standing in on her behalf and doing my best to take notes for her when she's back.
Very good. Thanks for joining us.
Yep. Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
So we got everybody, Kelly?
I believe that was all the booking individuals. Yes.
Right, Tara.
Yeah.
Sorry, one
Go.
minute. Was that Heidi Carpenter Harris?
Yeah. Yes.
Looking for? Okay, can you just verify there was a supervisor and people looking at everybody?
What's that?
I'll make sure there are 3 supervisors.
There are not.
No.
It's just no.
Just you and Heidi.
Just you and Heidi.
Very good. So just a couple of things. One is, so to kind of the issue of the going back and forth about what is a hazard, what isn't a hazard. Because of the liability within the easement, we, on the August fire complex is a really good example. We deferred and let Caltrans make the decision on whether it was a hazard or not. That's your responsibility to make sure trees don't fall onto the highway. And so while we have guidelines that we use in the Forest Service, I don't know what yours are. I'm sure that you have some, and that's your decision, because I'm not going to take on that liability for hazard trees and tell you it's not. So there's that. So there was not, on the August Fire Complex, for instance, there was no arguing.
Right.
And the bulk of those trees were removed to the tune of 4.5 million feet that went into the local sawmill. And the coals were removed as well. So that was, to me, that was a really good example of things working right. And if anything, I would say with the amount of mortality that we have, and what made that different to me was the collaboration up front, right? We, Stacy Smith and I, in my old job as a timber sale contracting officer, went out and met with Caltrans, looked at what we thought was going to be, and the highway was closed, so it was a perfect time to really get after those hazard trees and get that done. The monument fire didn't have as good a collaboration and didn't end up with a product that we were all happy with. If you recall, we had chip piles that had issues that were really, really deep, that spontaneously combusted later on. So that didn't have that kind of collaboration. So I would say, if anything, the one thing you hear from everybody is we're all kind of in the same boat. I could sit here and tell you about all the hazard trees I'm trying to address in campgrounds, right? Because I've got those same issues on long forest roads. But the one thing that we have in common is that we all are facing this problem, and we probably should take it on collectively and not individually. So while the hazard trees that we're dropping now, for instance, on Highway 3, that's good that they're not going to hit the highway. But now I have a problem as a land manager because I have fuel stacked up right next to the highway. And I may have some opportunities with some larger landscape analysis that, hey, we're going to be in this area. I would like to talk to you proactively about what are some trees that you're looking to, they're hazardous to you for whatever reason. Sometimes on the Highway 89 project, we worked with Caltrans and said, hey, there's so much shade on this highway, it's always icy. We're interested in a clear recovery zone. And so we brought Caltrans in early and said, okay, we're going to do a project on this case on Highway 3. What are your concerns? What are some opportunities? What can we do collectively together? So there's the responsive piece and there's the proactive piece that we just need to talk more. And I'm curious if Caltrans is at the table with the governor's wildfire crisis task force, because the amount of fuels that are now accumulating along the highways, I would think would be important. You mentioned CAL FIRE briefly, and I know we have an event coming up in Reading with that task force, and I'm wondering how involved you all are with that. And
Me personally, I'm more of a maintenance side. I do contract, I do have projects. That what you're talking about, that task force is a part of Office of Vegetation Wildfire Management. That's a headquarters. So they have their agenda, and I think there's a little bit different. I shouldn't say that, but there is that collaborative that goes on at the headquarters level. But I'm more of the maintenance aspect. I inherit a lot of issues. I was with Kelly Babcock on the August fire. I was there with you. I just didn't recognize you at the time but trying to, do that collaborative as best we can, and then try to push uphill. It just always seems that, construction and projects and the policies take a priority, and then by the time it comes to me, it's a little bit, I'm here what I can do on the boots on the ground, but when it comes to that higher level, I bring these topics up to my management as best I can.
So I think that I'm really glad that you're here, because we will be having those conversations about the Highway 3 project, which will be a proactive approach. We also, the Big Ranch project crosses 299, and then following Big Ranch closely on its heels will be a Hay Fork project that will take in that Highway 3 area that looks every bit as bad as it does driving to Reading from here. So I feel like we're collectively addressing this as a tree by tree basis, and really we have a forest wide, we need a forest approach, and that's going to require a lot more collaboration and cooperation, I think, on the front end, because I agree, we can't leave those hazard trees over the road. At the same time, we can't leave them stacked up next to the road either. So I'm interested, you said you had some meetings coming up this winter, where you will kind of prioritize where you're gonna be going next and what you're looking at. If we could get together after that and I could talk about some opportunities where we may be able to get some of that material out of the woods. And some potential treatments that would be beneficial.
Well, I'm gonna ask you to just hold questions. We're gonna let Jennifer, our next two presentations go, and then we'll circle back and see if we've got some time. I just don't
I
want.
apologize. No, I apologize for
That's
jumping the
fine.
line.
What's that?
Then I better write it down.
Right. All right, thank you very much. Okay, up next, we've got Jennifer Mata with BLM, the Reading Field Office Manager. So Jennifer, take it away.
Perfect. Like the others, I don't necessarily have a presentation, but I will talk a little bit about, I think, some of the things that BLM has been doing statewide to be proactive in addressing this issue and some of the things that we're attempting to do locally. So I will kind of piggyback and talk about a couple things that I think we've talked about previously. But I think BLM was very proactive in trying to streamline our NEPA capabilities associated with kind of understanding that we're starting to see greater tree mortality and also having continued issues with fire in the urban interface. So we have two different documents programmatically that we can tier to streamline NEPA analysis that will help us, I think, start to tackle the tree mortality issue. One is what we refer to as the HVRA, which was the vegetation EA that we completed a couple years ago now, focused on linear treatments along infrastructure, so roadways, power lines, and things of that nature. We've used it multiple times within the field office to do some fuels reduction. And then more recently, as people are aware, the strategic wildfire fuels treatment NEPA document that was just signed at the state level, which allows us to do work in the urban interface through a DNA rather than a full-on EA level analysis each time. So those are a few tools, I think, in the toolbox that will help us as we start to figure out how to more strategically and obviously more efficiently tackle these issues. We also entered into a few different Good Neighbor Authority agreements statewide just within the last, I think, 2 months, probably. We just had a rollout internally, but those agreements allow us from a state level to funnel money to partners using infrastructure bill money, but other sources if we can find it, to kind of get some more work done on the ground. So those GNAs, one is with CAL FIRE. The other one is with the triple C's, so the CCCs, and the last one is actually with Caltrans. So we seeded a small amount of money into each one of those agreements, but the one with Caltrans in particular, I think we were able to put in just about 200,000. I don't know what the cap is, but it's much greater than that over the life of that agreement. And what that is to do essentially is when Caltrans is starting to look at treatments along their linear infrastructure, so Highway 299 might be one that they would look at. If there are BLM parcels that are along the area that they're proposing to treat, then it allows us to actually give money to Caltrans to include those BLM parcels in that treatment. So that was just started. I think the pilot project for that agreement is going to be somewhere down off of, I want to say, Interstate 80. It's in the Motherlode field office, but that's the first kind of foray into using that agreement. So I think fairly impressive that our state forester was starting to think kind of bigger picture and recognizing that those issues do exist. So and then I think more specifically for us, we have been doing some work, fuels related work, obviously not on the scale that we wish to be doing it. But we are a small office and budgets are always interesting. In kind of response to what we're seeing on the ground in Trinity County in particular, and the conversations that we've had with members of the collaborative, we did have an opportunity to submit for some infrastructure bill money just this past month. In the way it worked this go round for us was 60% of the infrastructure bill money was carved off to these ecosystem focal areas for the interior, and then 40% is left into kind of the rest of the projects. And so thankfully for our field office, there was a Klamath drought focal area, which included down into Trinity County and kind of in the areas particularly that we're talking about from Lewiston over to the other side of Weaverville. And so we did submit a little over a $5 million project. I don't know if it will get funded. It's been forwarded upward and it's competing obviously against other Department of Interior projects, but and that project would be to start with basically getting an analysis and a look at the tree mortality kind of die-off areas that we have along 299, and then to do 3 years of implementation to start removal of those trees. It doesn't treat a lot of acres, unfortunately, because when you start talking about the possibility of those trees having no value, which we don't really know until we do an assessment, the cost obviously per acre gets extremely high because then you have to pay to get the material hauled out. So the acres will go farther if once we do the assessment, we can determine that we think the trees actually do have some monetary value. So hopefully we'll know about that in the next few months. I'm not sure what the time frame is, but that was our attempt to do something a little more. I wish it was proactive. It feels a little reactive at this point, just based on the number of trees that are dead and continue to die in the forest. But those are just some of the things that we're working on. It's kind of a double-edged sword. We really hope we get the $5 million, but at the same point, I only have one forester, so it comes in. It's gonna be a little stressful figuring out how to spend that. So yeah, I think that's enough for us. If there are questions, I guess let me know. I kind of will tag on to what Tina was saying earlier about how we deal with trees in rights of ways, and we're similar to the Forest Service with Caltrans, and even with the utilities at this point. We don't argue about whether or not the trees are a hazard. If the utility or Caltrans deems them to be hazardous, then they do get removed. And we do have a requirement that we get a value for that timber, but whether that value is in actual board feet because the tree has value and will be sent to a mill, or whether that valuation is done in tons of biomass, is really left to the authorized officer, me, in coordination with our state forester. So often on a lot of those tree issues that we're seeing, specifically in like highway rights of ways, the charge for that is done in pounds of biomass. So it might be like 50 cents. So but I think that's enough for me.
All right, Jennifer, thank you. I'm going to ask again that we hold questions for Jennifer and let Keith give his report, and then we will.
I have one comment.
Okay.
Jennifer, you've worked with John Barrett over in RCD Tehama County. He gave me a notice recently about certification. Public Resource Code 4799.05 provides an exemption from CEQA for prescribed fire thinning fuel reduction projects undertaken on federal lands that reduce high risk severity wildfires if those projects have been reviewed under the federal national NEPA Act. So that is one option that we have, or that's a great option that we have, that we don't have to duplicate CEQA when NEPA is already established. So working with Trinity RCD, I'm sure you've already known that one, but just want to make it clear that I'm aware of it too, and I'm pushing for that, and that simplifies our process. One of the other things I want to just mention is traffic control for us is about $5,000 a day, and on a recent project, crews were able to, on a good day, accomplish 5 acres. So it's 3 to 5 acres a day. And that contract, when we contracted it, it was running about $10,000 to $12,000 an acre. So when you do the math, we have these good neighbor agreements with monies, it goes fast. And so again, trying to get as much bang for your buck, trying to do what's the greater problem, what can we get done? That's a constant battle. So I appreciate the opportunity to speak there. Thank you.
Okay, again, if you have questions for Jennifer, maybe write those down or put them somewhere. But we're gonna let our next presenter, Keith, give a report for SPI. He's the Weaverville Office District Manager. So Keith?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. If you wanted to see some pictures, you already saw them from Dave DeLang. So he showed a lot of pictures that show exactly what we've been seeing for the past few years. So I guess I'll just present in the form of questions that I've been asked. So why is it happening? Prolonged drought. And then which trees seem to be suffering the most? It seems to be the trees in the most extreme moisture environments. So if they're used to very little water, they're getting even less. So there's just not enough water for some of those straws to get. So some of them are going to die. If they're used to having lots of water, then they don't have a root system that's deep enough and to effectively tap when that water system dries up. You'll see that oftentimes on meadow edges or even in stream zones, because a lot of times you'll look up a riparian zone and think, well, those should have the most water of any of them. Well, they're used to having the most water of any of them, but they don't have that now. So we're seeing Doug fir draws, the whole thing just dying from top to bottom. Harsh aspects. So along Highway 299 on the south aspect, where you're starting to get the mixture of gray pine and white oak and Douglas fir, the more sensitive species are going to die out, and you're seeing the whole stand of one species die out. Obviously, some species are more sensitive to change. I've been places where over on the east side, where first time we went in there to salvage, it was a ponderosa pine was dying, and bark beetles came in and helped that effect. And then the next time we come in there, there's the white fir's dying, and then the next time it's the Doug fir, and then the next time it's the cedar, and you end up with very little on some harsh sites. So the drought effects can be pretty frustrating. Elevated pest problems can often prolong and widen these effects. If you recall, in the Southern Sierras, they had a very severe mortality problem, drought related, and even healthy trees were being attacked by beetles. When the population gets too big, many trees that you think wouldn't rate very high on any kind of a risk assessment are dying. Even dying very small trees were being attacked. So what are we doing about it on our company property? First, I want to commend Tara for a solid approach advice on working together, because I think that's the only way we're going to be able to avoid causing problems for each other. But what are we doing about it? We've increased what we did was we increased our spring logging capacity. We brought in some loggers who can do things that our regular loggers can't do. We revised our log plan to work in lower elevation Doug fir areas, generally below 3,600 feet. We recently did a little recon flight of mortality across the area, and unfortunately, it happened to be the day when the fog line was about 3,600 feet, so everything looked great. But then, I know it was a nice trip, but it was for scenic value only. We also utilize the services of a couple of loggers who have tethered cutting capabilities. And what that means is that they have a tow basically and an anchor basically, so that the machine can walk over the hillside and bunch the trees, so that when you've got scattered volume, you can put them together, because the cable logging is expensive. And so when you could put more wood underneath one particular corridor, it makes it more capable of being holding its own financially. This allowed us to salvage places even adjacent to some of the areas we had already put in a permit for. So we could have exempt activities that coincide with our planned harvest blocks. And so when you have a guide there, you can get something done. If you're chasing individual trees or even little pockets, It really doesn't support itself. We currently have 2 tractor skidder salvage sites, maybe more similar to what Terry remembers, where you're basically chasing like a woodpecker, pecking at the side of a tree with bugs in it. And we're trying to hit the hot spots, but I almost have to close my eyes many times because there's very vast areas that are hit pretty hard. One of the biggest problems that people often ask, and I don't have very good news for, is the market conditions. So generally, salvage timber yields lower grade lumber. Stains, cracks, rot, insect holes are usually less desirable. Too much of the market has salvage on it, and when it does, it makes it even worse. The capacity and the desire to handle it by the mills or the retail stores is even less. So when you have fires like the Dixie Fire, that puts a lot on the market. In 2022, in Trinity County, on our district, all of our projects were salvage projects. So all of our volume came in from salvage. So a number I heard was 97% of the volume that went through our mills last year was salvage. So when you go down to the Home Depot store and you see trees that, or lumber that doesn't look like you maybe want it to look, maybe have a little sympathy for the board and go buy it anyway, like a puppy at the store. So that's why many fire killed, and we couldn't even salvage all of our fire killed wood, because we had, on our district, we had the August Complex, followed by McFarland, followed by Monument, then followed by the River Complex. And I'll just say this too, that we're thankful that the deep fires remained in the wilderness, because that's allowed us to do a little bit outside of the salvage realm. But we're at the end of it. It doesn't last very long, whether it's burned or die. It doesn't last very long. The Doug fir seems to hold up longer, so that's been good. But even big pine trees that normally we would have salvaged in years past, or maybe could next year, right now there's so much out there. Our log procurement folks aren't able to give any kind of value at the mill that warrants or even covers the logging cost. So I guess my encouragement would be don't give up trying to grab for salvage, and barring more large fires, hopefully I think someone can utilize that wood at more reasonable prices, at reasonable dosages. So one other thing, I did a little research, and some of you folks could do this just as well, is 1.5 to 2.7 times are trees likely to die when they're bigger during drought. So if you think about it, some of the best trees out there, when they're surrounded by other trees, when the forest is too dense, they're losing it. So the ones that we love, sometimes we love them to death. And I just took a picture 2 days ago of a tree that Dan Dresselhaus with CAL FIRE and I had a bet on. It wasn't for money or anything, but it was a 7-foot in diameter tree on the Forest Service next to our down there in the South Fork of the Trinity River. And it was a beautiful tree. And it was just ground burned, but it was surrounded by a dense forest. And I said, I think it's going to die, because it was pretty hot after drought. And he said, no, I don't think it will. Well, it wasn't until this year that it died from the August Complex, because you could see the pine starting to die around it. The smaller trees got affected, and then the pitch tubes we saw earlier this year, now it's red dead. So again, let's not love them to death. Let's not put ourselves in a box to where now we have another fire hazard and then we kill even more trees. So we do have to tackle the problem in a larger sense. So I apologize to people who have salvage, and sometimes they've waited 40 years to grow that timber so they can put their kids through college. And when it comes on the market at a time when you have the Dixie and the Monument in August, it has no value. And that's sad to me. So I'll stop there.
All right, thank you, Keith. So I know we have a question from Jerry, so have you forgot already?
So it sounds to me like your role is kind of on the ground project manager, is that right?
For maintenance.
For maintenance.
Yeah, and try to communicate
So
to
who in your
construction.
shop then would be for what Terry talked about, for the state level collaboration on fire and drought response, who would we go to?
So I'll bring that to my chief, and we all, if it's with Forest Service, we do have a contact with them that
Who is your chief?
My chief is Mike Mogan. And so we had Kelly Babcock, she was our federal lands liaison. And she's worked with your Forest Service or BLM. And then so during construction, they'll have their construction have their planners do somewhat outreach for landowners or community about what's going on as well.
So it sounds like it's kind of siloed. You have construction, you have management. Who, I guess I'm asking above that, to pick up on Keith's point, which picked up on Tara's, this high level collaboration that has to happen to kind of manage the whole process, not these individual components. Who would that be?
Well, it just depends on how far we want to take it up.
Okay.
I have my manager who's a part of roadside maintenance is Mike Mogan. And then a part of all of maintenance is Mike Webb, and he's the district deputy director. And then the deputy, the director is, she's now under pressure, I can't think, is Dave Moore.
So somebody got those names, hey?
Right, that'll be in the minutes.
Right.
And I would start at the bottom and I'll bring it to my chief.
Great.
And then, I do have contact with, with him often every day and as well as once a week with Webb. And so I'll bring this, collaborative as best we can.
And just one more. You said you quoted, I think you said $10,000 to $12,000 per acre to work it.
Yes.
So what is that work? Is that just falling timber and kind of like what Kelly pointed out up on Buckhorn? And
so that's the state average.
For all different kinds of work.
So I've recently done one, and it was mastication and tree thinning. It was with feller bunchers and chipping and all of that.
Okay.
So, but that will also cost you just as much with manual because of slow pace for project. So, $1.9 million can treat 150 acres.
Okay.
And that's not much. That's 6 miles.
Thanks. Okay, yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I don't have to have these questions answered here as long as there's a way to get them answered and have them circle back into the minutes.
Sure.
So, a couple of things. You had mentioned that your CAL FIRE contract wasn't renewed and that was disappointing to you. But then that the CCC labor source was no longer available from the standpoint of budget and time constraints. So to me, those are contradictory, and I'm not sure, is there a budget problem or is there an availability problem? Is there both, and how does that work?
My CCC ability to use them is I can use them for a certain schedule throughout the year. Also, my amount that I can schedule, amount of hours that I can schedule has also decreased. That's what I meant by that.
So it's not a fluid thing. There isn't a budget to get the work done. And if it wasn't utilized because CAL FIRE wouldn't renew, you can't take that money and utilize it with somebody who maybe does have time and capacity.
It's not available. The contract for CAL FIRE is not available for Caltrans. Caltrans and CAL FIRE does not have a contract. So that's out. I mean, it's not available. The CCC, yeah, it's frustrating. The CCC has just been decreased. So that's what I'm told. So, and I'm sorry if I'm not answering your question, but that's what I'm doing myself.
Okay, and no, it actually doesn't answer my question, but I can take it up with you later and get the clarity that I'm looking for. And then I also just had a quick question with regard to, it sounded like some assessments were very subjective as to what does and doesn't need to get removed. And I'm wondering why what I hear from Forest Service is super objective. I don't understand a subjective point of view.
I look at it as like ice skating in the Olympics, you know, it's just opinion. So an arborist can be a little bit more aggressive than, let's say, a biologist on tree risk assessment of that tree. And so, and I don't mean, I'm not pointing that there are certain personalities that will think that, well, that has a higher value as habitat, that's necessary for stream shading, for fish management, for whichever it may be. And so there are difficulties on, you know, removing trees, and the people in charge that, you know, the ones that they feel necessary, well, that tree's gonna live, and let's just see what happens. And so that's my point about that. That's the
Okay,
subjectivity.
so I didn't understand subjectivity with regard to that tree isn't dead yet. We're deciding whether we're gonna wait and watch or remove it. I thought you were talking about there's stuff dead and we're sort of subjectively deciding whether or not it's gonna get removed. You're not saying that.
Right, I'm just saying that the tree itself, you know, different personalities have different assessment of the tree.
The living tree.
The living tree,
somewhat living
yeah,
tree.
yeah.
Okay.
But it's
Thank
gonna
you.
come back, it's only half, you know, 3/4 or a quarter burnt, you know, and how much around the trunk, et cetera, is scarred, so.
So thanks
Okay.
to Randy for identifying that tree mortality assessment scale.
Well, and it sounds like you're talking about your internal environmental compliance process, and the evaluation that maintenance is making is then evaluated by your biological staff. Is that right? Or is it a bigger conversation with the public?
I don't want to get too much into detail about it. That it is, it just depends on who you're talking with.
Okay.
So if you're talking to maintenance folks who are out there every day, you talk to Joe McNeely, he's gonna have an opinion. Well, I know my schedule, I know what I can do. Somebody else might say, well, you know, maintenance can handle it, or we can worry about it later, and might not have the realistic or a different opinion about the assessment.
Okay,
Sorry, the last one I had is,
last question from
Yep.
Tara.
that's not a question,
Okay,
so much
comment.
as, you know, we do have post-fire stuff that we use, but having marked timber through the 90s when we had a lot of insect activity, I'm afraid that you guys are, you know, putting in traffic control and you're dropping the dead trees, where right next to it, you have trees that are riddled with bugs that I could tell you is gonna be dead in the next 6 months, and I know you don't necessarily have the staff to look at that. So that again, to me, just drives home that if we're working together, we can not only tell you using our guidelines for insect activity and how many bugs and where they're at, we can help you so you don't have to come back to the same spot again and again and again as the trees completely turn orange, right? Then we knew that one's is dead, but we also can look at the green ones based on the insect activity on those trees. And I realize that you know, you might have an arborist, but they're not out there looking at every, you know, stretch of tree,
Right.
stretch of road where you're dropping trees. So
And we're getting, you know, we're getting into maintenance operations into project. And so if I have, you know, 25 trees on this one little section of route, our maintenance folks can handle it. Now, if we're going to start getting into, well, let's look at the dead tree and what the possible will be dead, we need to take 150, we need to take 200 trees out of the same section. So now that creates more of a workload. Now that we cannot handle within maintenance, then it elevates into a project, and that is a lot more extensive and time, you know, there's a lot more time that goes into that type of project. And yeah, it needs to happen. We do have to make that effort, but you know.
no, I got you. I think I'm tracking what you're throwing.
Yeah.
So you're just like, here's a problem. We've got our maintenance people. We're going to address this problem. And then, you know,
I've been screaming for the last 7 years since I've been working here, since Car Fire, and this is what, yeah.
Copy. I got you.
I appreciate it.
All right, all good stuff, all good conversation as we anticipated. But we do have to bring this one to a close, since we do have 2 other presentations on our agenda. But do want to thank all of our presenters, and Tom, especially for you coming up the mountain here. Excellent reports, and again, as we had hoped and anticipated, it did begin some discussion and dialogue about, hey, where do we go forward with regard to, you know, addressing this very, very large scale issue. Collaboration seems to be the critical concept and understanding of how we're going to work at a landscape level. So any ideas as we build future agendas on how to follow up this conversation to get maybe a little more into that collaborative approach, let Kelly and I know, and then we'll try to work with those individuals or presenters for future, because I suspect there's additional conversation that needs to happen. So thank you again all very, very much. All right, up next, we have Randy Paris. So
Yes.
Thank you, Randy. She's going to give us a presentation. We've been hearing a lot about this land tender program, and she's going to give us a short but informative presentation. So we all have a better sense of the tool that land tender can be for us.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to the group. This land tender program is a decision support tool that Nick Goulet, our executive director, heard about from the gentleman who developed it. And, you know, as grant funding goes, it's taken us some time to get the resources to set it up. We've worked with the Sierra Nevada Conservancy and used a grant for the Upper Trinity to be able to get the system built out for Trinity County. And the Forest Service, both the Six Rivers and the Shasta Trinity, has worked with us to, you know, continue to be able to fund development of land tender across the entire county. And then recent development is we're actually gonna build out land tender for the western side of the Trinity landscape, which is in Humboldt County, so outside of Trinity County. So I know Nick has presented the idea that we think this could be a great tool and this is what it can do, and we're excited, but now we actually have land tender set up. Excuse me, I feel like I'm chewing gum and walking at the same time here. Let me just get my screen shared for everybody. So we are set up now. We did do training with partners across Trinity County, Forest Service, both Six Rivers and Shasta Trinity were invited. I reached out to BLM Forester, but I've heard she's moved on, so that's probably why I didn't hear back from her. And the RCD and NRCS and CAL FIRE were all invited to kind of train the technicians who might have the GIS skills to run land tender themselves.
Who showed?
Everybody
Oh,
pretty
good.
much
Well, you said they were invited.
You know, I have to say, CAL FIRE, you know, maybe the timing wasn't great, you know. They were unable to make the in-person training. We do imagine that we're gonna offer follow-up trainings, but we didn't want to delay the rollout for the people that could be there. So I've shared my screen with you all, and this is looking at the land tender program. It's an online tool that you log into. It is at its heart, you know, a geographic system, and there are inputs into land tender from ArcMap, GIS, whatever your program you might be using to generate shapes. There are things that do need to get uploaded into the system, but that's where training the technicians who already have the GIS experience so that we can work collaboratively across all sorts of different skill sets was what I had imagined. And we have an unlimited number of users who can now access the Trinity County landscape within land tender. One of the capacities in here is we can set up multiple collaborative groups. So if the RCD wanted to have a collaborative group to talk about the community wildfire protection plan and updates coming in 25 or whenever that timing is, that could be its own collaborative group. You know, if the Shasta Trinity wanted their own collaborative group, if the BLM wanted theirs. So there's a lot of potential complexity that we could put into the system so that you could have your own working groups within the system to look at the landscape. So I think those were the couple of things I wanted to just talk about in terms of setting. Land tender starts with a planning area. What are you curious about? The Trinity County Landscape and Land Tender is the biggest one that they've set up so far. So in some ways, it's a little bit daunting to look at the whole county because of how big the landscape is. So what I did for our discussion today is I chose a planning area that coincides with a joint project that the two forests are working on South Fork Mountain. There's a proposal to do a shaded fuel break up there. We were going to meet in the field and talk about the project, but you know, fire season got in the way a little bit. So now we get to look at land tender ahead of time. What I did to generate this planning area was I looked at the ridge line, and any of these pods, which are called potential operating delineations, and it's what folks have kind of started to talk about in terms of breaking up the landscape into segments that we can think about where are treatments most likely to have a good effect on overall fire behavior and our ability to approach a landscape and operate out there during an incident. So I thought, well, that sounds like a good way to organize a planning area. If we're interested in South Fork Mountain, let's look at all the pods that touch the ridgeline. Now, this is actually one of the critical things about land tender that may in fact take the most collaboration is what is really our planning area and what do we want to consider? Because once I did this, I was really, you know, rifling around and thinking about what I had done. And it seemed like I could have potentially created a buffer around each of the communities and then added that to the pods that touched South Fork Mountain. And that may in fact be a better planning area than just considering the pods. So I just want to open it up as something for everybody to think about when they're thinking about this tool and how to structure the inquiry that we're going to ask for from the system, because there are multiple things that the tool is taking into account. And you can see that on the left side of the page, it's talking about the planning area that I've uploaded. I generated this in a mapping program. And now it's asking me to set priorities for my scenario. And there are several categories that I can set priorities for. So there's assets, which are like homes and roads and power lines. And safety is evacuation routes and the likelihood for a community transition. There's this community transmission zone where it's the likelihood for the fire to travel within communities. And I think actually you can kind of see some of the issues with having such a big landscape. The data layers are displayed on the right side of the screen, and it talks about our strategic areas, resources, and assets. Excuse me, I just need a drink, pardon me. So you can see how some of these things are grayed out, and that's because I'm zoomed out too far. So the tool is telling me I'm at too big of a scale. And now I can look at things under the data layers that I couldn't look at before because I was zoomed too far out. So there are two different ways to relate to the tool. You can run a scenario, which is the panel on the left side where you're actually telling the program, I want to really focus on the assets on the landscape. So I'm gonna put that at a 5. And you can set up a whole scenario, but you can also rifle around the data layers and just get a sense. And I hope everybody can see this, but when I put the toggle for assets way over to the side, it started showing blue shaded areas along the roadways, around the communities. It's saying this is where the assets are identified on your landscape. And this is, you can do the same with safety. I'm concerned about safety things, recreation, biodiversity.
I have a question.
Yes.
So the darker blue are those, is this like a prioritization tool that says you should do the work here in the dark blue areas first? Or what exactly is it telling you to do?
The dark blue is saying that you have the highest impact if you go to the dark blue areas for the combination of assets and safety parameters that I said are important on the landscape. Sometimes if you just have a high biomass area, almost anything you do to toggle these different things, the high biomass area will kind of come up, like a really dense forested area that hasn't been treated in a while. So there are some inherent things with the system that Land Tender has set up. They've essentially, in places where we have LiDAR data, we use the LiDAR data to inform the surface model that Vibrant Planet is using. Where we don't have LiDAR data, they've constructed a synthetic LiDAR surface. So from like land fire data and aerial imagery that they've utilized. And this is where I know everybody's heard that. I feel like a lot of people may have heard the presentation from Vibrant Planet. So I didn't actually want to recover that, but I think as we do more than just a preview, which is I feel like what you can do in 20 minutes. So I'm sorry if maybe I don't get into all the details, but there is this estimation of biomass across the landscape with the Land Tender system. And that's why they can generate this community transition zone information. I actually think this is kind of interesting to look at. So I'll just take away the scenario. And this is an example of using the data layers to just investigate your landscape. The very orange areas are the places where there is most biomass. And really what we're seeing is some of the fire history out there, the immediate risk kind of goes away after a fire. But as those fires age, the biomass on the landscape will then start being more problematic. You get regrowth. So that's what some of the differing colors are across this landscape in the community transmission zone. Excuse me, I don't know why that's a tongue twister this morning. But you also can bring up, disturbance hazards. We've just been talking about drought and the risks inherent. And Vibrant Planet has worked closely with some really great ecological professionals to look at the best landscape. Excuse me, I was reading Carol Fall's note and I got distracted there, but they are gleaning from the best science to assess risk out on the landscape using the information that has been generated through the LiDAR data and through this synthetic LiDAR layer that they've been able to create. If we could get LiDAR for the entire landscape, that would certainly be better information than the synthetic surface. But in the absence of having LiDAR everywhere, it's better than nothing. And they can run their models to help give us some input on where drought hazard is high. Why don't you want to turn off? Oh, I'm sorry, I guess. And where fire hazards are high. So I wonder, I've kind of given a big picture overview. I've covered the importance of collaboration for determining the planning area. And I kind of wanted to switch a little bit and start talking about distinct management areas, but I'm wondering if it would be good for questions right now, just so I don't run ahead and leave everybody behind.
Yeah, Larry's got his hand up.
And Carol had a question pop
Yeah.
up.
We do have chat, is there?
It's hard to get at the chat.
Okay. Should we start with Carol's question since she was up first, and then we'll go to Larry second? So Larry, hang on. Can we pull up Carol's question? Yeah, there we go. Is Lantana ready to use to evaluate the projects in the North Lake, Barman Ridge, Trinity Camps, roads, partnership, etc., make recommendations?
Yeah, you know, Carol, now that land tender is online for Trinity County, one of the things that we committed to doing as part of this whole process was having community meetings in North Trinity. And so we would like to use this tool to have community meetings. And I'm almost wondering, and I am honestly curious about the feedback that people have. I feel like presenting the idea and starting to talk about the planning area in one opportunity and then having a follow-up might actually be the most functional way to do it, just so that you're not dumping people in the deep end and expecting, you know, really good results in the moment. I would actually like to see that feedback on what's important for this community in this place. So the short answer is yes, Carol. And I actually think I'd love to talk to you about the best way to structure some of those meetings up in North Trinity to get people involved in the discussion.
I don't think the community as a whole will have a clue what you're doing. So I think that's kind of a waste of time. I'm thinking you need to get the people who are trying to implement projects, you know, the Forest Service with their pods and the people we have under our NCRP grant. We need to get them to say, is this going to help us plan where we need to have future projects? I mean, that's kind of where I'm headed. I mean,
Yeah,
what's the general public going to think? They're going to not have any idea what you're doing.
Yeah, I guess maybe then what I'm hearing is work with the Forest Service and your technical service person that you have from NCRP to develop the planning areas and the things that we're going to compare. And then, I mean, we were really hoping that this would be a tool to get public involvement, public buy-in for the project ideas.
But the public, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, let's go to Larry. Larry, you're up.
Okay, so my question is, since the project area you're looking at here is your sample is, I'm right in the middle of it. And I don't understand the lines that you've drawn. I get what the information that you're getting and how valuable that is, but the lines that you've drawn here for this project area just don't really make a lot of sense to me, since I know the lay of the land. Like, for instance, why would you cross the South Fork of the Trinity and include the east side of that in your area there?
Well, I'm gonna bring up another scenario that I laid out, and this was my example of the distinct management areas. And so I find myself debating things with myself, and I had wondered, well, are the watershed boundaries a better delineation than the pod boundaries? So that I noticed the exact same thing that you did, Larry, that the pods are crossing the South Fork, but I think in some of that ground, it's so steep and rugged that really treating something in along the river is extremely difficult. So I think that's what they tried to do with these bounds or the pods and the boundaries, is say, where can we affect change and address fuels conditions across the landscape and be able to treat things. But I had the same question, and I've been chewing on exactly what you're saying, Larry, for quite some time. So I would be more than happy to use watershed area as the tool to segment this landscape adjacent to South Fork Mountain.
Well, I was thinking more geology, like it, yeah. And also, if you're planning a fuel break for the ridge, then let's stay on the ridge. Going across the river over into the roadless area doesn't really make any sense to me, but just saying.
What happens with these distinct management areas is you can't make them too narrow because of the polygons underlying the data. If the polygon center falls outside of the linear feature I've created on the landscape, and those linear features could be a lot of different places. So maybe we just say, we're just gonna look at South Fork Mountain. Actually, I have examples of that in Land Tender, and they just seem to give me a little bit less information about the landscape because of how the polygons are laying. And when you delineate an area, it can cut off some of the information. And so, but yeah.
Okay, so I get it. The polygon is the polygon, and just because it's included in this area doesn't mean you're going to treat that. That's where the information is, and then you can just do the treatment on the ridge, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
We can look at the planning area that's just the ridgetop treatment, and it was a little bit less satisfying than looking at South Fork Mountain in general. Yeah, so this is exactly what I was hoping to demonstrate with this planning area discussion.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you. And so, Larry, I look at it like here's the blobs, and what we shape it into, what the project becomes is kind of, it's not, the box isn't going to tell us exactly where we need to go and everything we need to do, because it doesn't factor in operability. It doesn't always know, recent fire history. It doesn't know some of the things that we would use to right size it. The CWPP is still a tool that's going to be factored into how we're going to reduce risks around communities. But this is a really good way to start like those discussions about what are the values at risk, what do we want to make sure we're prioritizing, and then we will continue to incorporate the CWPP that had a lot of public engagement into it as it was developed, to work through Land Tender to go from a blob, a recommendation of what we, area we should be working in, and then we'll make it into a project that's efficient, that's effective, and that reduces risk to our communities as a priority and protects those values at risk. That's kind of the point of this, is for lots of people to weigh in on what are our priorities out there, so we capture them all and before we start, you know.
Because it's not like there's one best place to treat. It's given the things that you're trying to balance across the landscape. That's what the toggles are on the left side of the screen. Maybe in some places, you're really only caring about assets and safety. In other places, maybe you're like, well, I'm actually really concerned with carbon and biodiversity, because that's our resiliency as an ecosystem, and being able to sequester carbon in the forest and have those be resilient, you know, from a climate change perspective. And I was actually thinking for the CWPP, we could take each of those projects, buffer them appropriately so that it makes sense to run them through the system. They could be a distinct management area in and of themselves. And this would help us rank across the CWPP projects, which would give us the most restorative return on investment. So as we set all this stuff up, the system will look at the biomass and, you know, the community transmission zones and risks from drought and fire. And it'll say, if you treat here, you're potentially getting your best return on the investment for the treatment. So if we were actually looking at the CWPP projects, we could say, this would be a great one. You get a lot of bang for your buck if you went and treated that.
Right, and then there's also the operations and financial piece of it. You had one project up there was going to cost $42 million was an estimate, I think I saw. And that if you take all the fuzz out of areas, that may be, you know, that may be true if we just focus on the biomass. So there's a lot of pieces that are and moving parts inside there. And I think the purpose of land tender is to get us to have these exact conversations.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, that's why it's so important to have these discussions of what are we really looking at? Like what Larry brought up. I recognize I did this quickly so we could facilitate a discussion today. My intent was not really to run a scenario because 20 minutes wasn't going to get us there. But what Larry brought up is exactly the type of conversation that one would expect as you're using land tender to look at these things. I think there's a lot of different ways to utilize this tool. And, you know, I'm curious, you know, when everything is important, nothing's important. It's hard. You can't do everything at once. So how do we start getting at really effective treatments that will have a large scale impact and get us where we need to go collectively and prioritize the things that people are concerned about across the landscape in a differential way. Like the distinct management areas. So what I used here was the pod boundaries, and I buffered it so it's 3,000 feet. But we could say we want to look at Forest Service lands, private lands, BLM lands, state lands. You can only have one designation for a distinct management area in your planning area for one setup. You can't have, I'm concerned about the pod and I'm concerned about the ownership, and they can't be stacked when it's a distinct management area. It's one designation for the planning area and the scenario that you're running. And then when you've partitioned the landscape this way, you can assign different values to the different distinct management areas. So if you had private lands, what are the most important things to the private landowners about managing their lands and mitigating the hazards that they face, both drought and fire, or that we face maybe. And then Forest Service, there's different priorities, different, you know, weighing that happens potentially because it's federally managed land. It's informed by what the communities think, but private, BLM might have different constraints, state lands might have different constraints. So each one of those distinct areas, you can weigh the objectives and run your scenario And I do want you all to see that, and I know maybe I've
Yeah,
run out
ready.
of time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
So this was just supposed to be a teaser.
This was just a teaser,
I
yeah.
apologize.
Just a intro, just to give everybody a sense of what the potential for this tool can be. So thank you very much, Randy.
Thank you
I'm
for the
sure there is
opportunity. Yeah.
a lot more to learn about land tender, and maybe again at subsequent meetings, we can get a little more in depth, give you an opportunity there. And I was just gonna share, I'll say also that if there are questions, I apologize for trying to pack so much in here. But you could send those questions to Kelly or I and let us know who the question is directed at. And we will ensure that those questions get answers and get that back out to everybody.
On that, I think I misspoke earlier about who my hierarchy is at work. And if we could have any questions brought to, I gave Kelly a number for our PIO, just so that there's organized delivery of information and exchange. And that, you know, Kelly or Jill, if you can talk to if you wanted to call my management, I think that would be a very a smooth opportunity, and that we can follow back at the next meeting and deliver the answers to some of these questions. Appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Again, thank you, Randy, very much for that presentation. So we do have one more on our agenda here. So we're pleased to have Travis Finch. And I apologize, Travis, for misspelling your last name. It is F-I-N-C-H, not Fitch. So at the last meeting, it was suggested, requested that Kelly and I kind of look into this alert wildfire camera need once again. Several years ago, evidently, this was a hot topic, and quite a bit of work and effort went into it. Travis was able to share with me a white paper that was developed back then, and kind of a ranking system that was developed in terms of evaluating sites and which ones would be of greater import or priority than others. So we did get that out to everyone, I believe, yesterday. So hopefully you've had a chance to look at that. But Travis is here just to bring us up to speed. There's been some developments since that white paper was put out there, and he's going to bring us up to speed in terms of where opportunities may exist today that maybe weren't here several years back. So without further ado, Travis, you want to take it away?
Yeah, so as you'll see on the white paper, this is actually from 4 years ago was the last time we had this discussion. And at the time, I think one of the hangups was management at the Forest Service, but I know that we since have new management, and both at the district level and at the forest level, and they've been fantastic to work with, particularly on some of the communication projects my company's working on. So that has actually allowed us to re-rank some of the sites. I don't know if you're able to switch over to that one.
Yeah.
So Kelly, myself, Pat, and I think Diana was there, and I don't recall who else all was there. We kind of ranked these sites in terms of feasibility based on a number of different factors. The primary one was, you know, since so much of the good mountaintops are managed by Forest Service, that was kind of one of the prime factors in ranking these sites, because obviously we can't do all of them. But yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, my company Velocity, we have been able to utilize some additional Forest Service sites for communication infrastructure. And so some of these sites, which were kind of on the wish list before, have been moved up in ranking. Two of the ones that were brought to my attention in a recent conversation with Jim was Picket Peak and Ironside Mountain. Last we spoke about this issue 4 years ago, Ironsides was still kind of a pipe dream, but we have since built a communication some communication infrastructure there that primarily serves Burnt Ranch School with internet, but we also have excess solar capacity and data capacity. And with the Monument Fire taking that lookout away, it makes sense to put a wildfire camera at that site. And then Picket Peak was also another site that Velocity previously didn't have a presence at, but we now have a presence there. And I think putting cameras at both of those sites will, but right now we have, I think, a total of 2 sites in Trinity County. One is on Oregon Mountain and one is on Barker Mountain, kind of northeast of Hayfork. And having one on Ironside will give us more of a look downriver and to the west. And Picket Peak, with its elevation on South Fork Ridge there, really kind of lets us see almost all the way out to the coast. So yeah, those are the 2 sites that were recently brought to my attention. I have never personally been in direct communication with the alert wildfire people. When I previously was working on this with Pat, he was in communication with them. But you know, we're totally willing to donate the internet bandwidth and any power to make this function, because we do realize the importance to the community. And if there are other sites on here too that are kind of low hanging fruit. You know, Trinity Center is one of them, and I've recently been speaking with Sierra Pacific about one of those. And yeah, there are a couple other sites here that actually have hardline power. And those, I mean, like, if they send us the cameras, we'll install them. So that's really all I have. It's kind of a repeat from 4 years ago. So if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to.
Harold has her hand up.
So, where on Ironside? My understanding is that where the repeater was that burned down, that the Forest Service is still talking to the tribes about the, you know, the sensitivity of that site. It didn't sound like that was going to be any time soon. Do you know kind of what the status of that is? No.
Rebuilding the fire lookout that was there?
Yeah, where the Forest Service had their repeater.
Well, their repeater was actually, as I understand it, underneath the Forest Lookout building. And so I don't know what maybe Tara can speak to that, what the timeline, if any, is on that.
Yeah, Carol, so the cleanup is finally underway for the lookout and the hazmat that was associated with that. We've contracted with HSU to do a study of the whole mountaintop to determine the limits to the historic site. So that will happen next. And then after that, we do have money to rebuild the lookout. However, recently the Mendocino tried to rebuild the lookout and it came in 2 times the anticipated cost. So we are exploring other options. So Ironside is a while it may be primed from the Velocity side of the fence and from internet, there is definitely additional work to be done up there. So it is underway, and we have contracted to get that archaeological work done, and that's already in the works as well. But I can't. It's not something I can pull the trigger.
Right. I mean, yeah, I wanted to make sure it was the same site, that we were talking about the same place. But, you know, with Dina Magdaleno and all that, their comments, it just sounded like, you know, it might be a while before that would be
But I guess my question though, is that infrastructure necessary? I got a sense from you, Travis, that it really isn't, right? You could proceed.
We lease space kind of down the west side of the mountain. We have a tower there. That's where our communication infrastructure is. And I imagine if a camera were to be added, I mean, I don't know if it's my camera, can I put it up? If it's someone else's camera, so this is what we ran into before.
Right, so,
Yeah.
so this particular mountain's top is different than other mountaintops. It's not about the structure, it's about the actual mountain type. Top is sacred, and the tribe has been wonderful for us to work with. They really are trying to meet us part way. But you can imagine if you had a sacred site, there'd be some discussions that have to happen before you can throw a camera up in a sacred site, right? Depending on what ceremonies they have up there and that kind of thing. So we're working through that. But I don't expect Ironsides to be one that can go quickly. And it's not, it's the process has started. It just is not one that I can move quickly on.
Okay.
Even in terms of adding, like if I want, like I have a security camera up there aimed down at my infrastructure in case of vandalism and animal attacks and things like that. So, I mean, if it's my wildfire camera and I'm putting it up on my tower, how is that outside the realm of my lease that I already have up there, I guess is the question.
So we can talk about that after, but you can imagine, again, if they were having ceremonies, what you've essentially done instead of a camera that points straight down, is you'll have a camera that could point right into their ceremonies that they have on top of the mountain, that would potentially be a problem.
Nice.
So does that make sense?
Yes, yeah.
So I'm happy that there is definitely a need. There's definitely a need, which is why we asked for disaster supplemental money to put a lookout back up there. But it's something we're working on together in cooperation with the tribe. And it's not as fast as everyone would like, but we are making progress in that direction.
Well, again, the goal of bringing this forward is, and certainly the last meeting, the request was made that we look into this and kind of resurrect it. We got a long list of potential sites. So I have been reaching out to Alert California through, UC San Diego, not getting a lot of.
Through UC San Diego, you said?
Yeah.
Because we were.
That's Alert California. Alert Wildfire is out in UNR, and
right.
So I'm not even sure I understand the nuances between the two organizations, but the two cameras that we currently have in Trinity County are managed by Alert California, UC San Diego. And yeah, my attempts to kind of locate or identify the individual that we need to work with to see if they can collaborate with us and take advantage of, Velocity's offer and others, that I'm still working on that. But before we go forward, I think what I would need is, okay, what sites do we all agree that are the low hanging fruit, right? That we don't have any, obstacles, and that we could, if Alert California or others have the hardware, right, to provide to us, that the skids are greased and we can make it happen. So if we can walk away, maybe not today, but maybe over the next several months with what are those 2 or 3 sites that we all agree are the low hanging fruit that we can move forward with? That's the goal here.
Right, absolutely, and I'm on board. And so when I dug into it, and I appreciate it showing back up on the agenda again. So I went and did some digging on my end, and as far as I know, we haven't received the final proposal for where exactly these cameras are going to be. So I can't start the analysis until I get the final proposal. And then to submit that. Well, that's the thing. So we were working with Graham, who was at UNR, but then he left at some point in the last couple of years. So that kind of complicated it a little bit. And then Tyler March, is that sounding right? From Digital Path, where the people, talking to Stacy Smith, who was really helping us out with this when it first started. So I'm looking for a final proposal. When I get that, I actually have
from whoever it is going to provide the hardware.
Whether it's Digital Path or whoever. But I appreciate that Velocity is willing to work with us and get, and that we have now more opportunities and to be able to move more quickly on that part of it. So it'll be fantastic.
Picket Peak, is that because that was the other one you were suggesting? So should be low hanging fruit. Is that?
Picket Peak is it is a Trinity County owned cell tower leased on the footprint on Forest Service managed land.
Right.
And as I understand it, the county kind of has complete autonomy over to whom they lease and things like that. And so if they wanted to lease to UC San Diego, whoever that owner of that equipment is, they have the authority to do that. And then, I can provide an internet hookup for the camera. And so we we don't have the same issues maybe at other sites we have to tackle.
Correct. Tara, you in agreement with Picket Peak that might be a good?
Well, I'm
Good
writing it
option.
down, so I'll look. I like to move things quickly, but I can't be like,
Yeah.
make it so, let's do that.
We're just trying to throw some ideas out here.
No, I appreciate it. So Picket Peak and with Trinity County's apparatus.
Are the cameras readily available? You said San Diego will just hand you a camera if you say go to the site?
They bring, my understanding is that for a period of time, they were freely available, and that they would work with whoever the land manager was to basically do the installations. That's the piece I think that we need to get confirmed whether or not that's still the case.
Right.
And I do have another contact for somebody else who has been dealing with that, who was previously with California Fire Safety Council, but is now, I think, working with one of these groups now, and has a great deal of knowledge with regard to like who we would need to be connecting in order to make all this stuff fly.
Is that on your radar to do then?
Yeah, I just got that contact yesterday, so I can pass that along.
Yeah, and I can do the legwork on it.
Yeah.
And even if they don't have people to install it anymore, if they want to ship it to me, I have people who can contact them.
Fair enough. Good. Sounds good. Yeah, I just, that piece I know was part of the reason why this was like, it was a high priority back then, was there was like a window of time when they had the cameras, they had the installers, and all they needed was permission to like get up and do them. And I think that window passed, so that's why I'm not certain exactly where we are with regard to now.
I suspect COVID had a little bit to do with that.
Because it was 2019.
I wiped everything out there.
So yes, we can definitely be reaching out and be in contact with you when we get a little bit more information.
Yeah, I just want to say there is no downside to having more cameras in the county, and I agree wholeheartedly. I just have to be sensitive to some of the places where we put them, and when I get the final proposal, I can start the analysis on that. So, and I think I've got some increased staffing and some more capability, so we should be able to move on a little more quickly. Well, a lot more quickly than we have in the past. Tremendously more quickly than we have in the past.
So was there a suggestion from the group though, as to how many we want to try to, pursue at this point in time? I mean.
Well, I don't think we know the resources about how many, let's pursue them all.
So just so you guys know, I mean, I've been to the fire chiefs meeting. I mean, PG&E has put up hundreds of these cameras and they've offered free ones to us. There are thousands of these cameras in the state, and it's just really pitiful that Trinity County only has 2 because this keeps falling through the gaps. So I'll shut up.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm not going to be recognized, so I'll just start speaking up. But that's my point, is we've been working on this now for 5 years. Picket Peak's been at the top of the list for the 5 years. What is it going to take to get, I mean, I don't understand why, every other county in the state's got like 20 or 30 of these cameras up. We have 2 in Trinity County, and we need it here the most.
Right.
So is there any downside to, say, submitting all the potential Forest Service sites as the final, and then if we don't have the resources or the support from the cooperators to make them all happen at once, at least the Forest Service can move forward with whatever analysis? I mean, I wonder if that sounds daunting to go from 2 or 3 to however, I didn't count how many there were on the list for the Forest Service.
So there's, well, it's kind of nuanced. I mean, any of the sites that are here that are Forest Service that are, at the top of the list, they're all ones with, leaseholders, and then but then we come up against things like on Ironside, and I don't know the regulations. So we also have a presence on Plumber Peak, which is another Forest Service site, and can we just
Right, but they're just, so currently they're not covered in the special use permit, I would assume. Because they're not there, so it's just.
So it's So Plumber Peak in particular, it's a lease versus a special use permit, so I don't know what the difference is between those two of those. I mean, the Hayport Chamber of Commerce is the leaseholder, and as I understand it, they then sublease to whomever can fit in their building, and that way the Forest Service doesn't have to micromanage it. I believe that's how it's been presented to me as how it works, and the same with Picket Peak. So I guess the question is, does the Forest Service even need to be involved with those two sites? I mean, the Ironside Mountain is different because we have a special use permit specific to us versus a site lease. But I'm wondering if maybe the Picket and Plummer sites can be fast tracked since they're a lease versus special use.
Well, I hope so. That's what I'd like to see happen. So, and then I just need somebody to submit. So no, I don't think there's a downside to submitting them all on one list, other than I wouldn't put Ironsides on the list because I can't move down that one right now. And I don't want that one, because I'm telling you right now, I can't go fast on that one. I don't want that one to slow the rest down. And then I can do some digging and find out on this Plumber Peak and Picket Peak and see if we can move quickly on those.
So quick question on Ironside. Would it be, because I know that you're already in some sort of consultation for reconstruction of the lookout, that's probably going to take a while. But if we're to separately say, hey, can we put this camera in its own little box and worry about that separate from the whole mountaintop? Is that a possibility?
So what we're doing is we're studying the size of the historic or the sacred property. So that's what's being surveyed, is the whole top of the mountain, and it's not necessarily for the lookout per se, it's for the whole top of the mountain.
And so do you have, because I don't even know if my site is within the bounds of that.
And that's what we're gonna find out.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Is Bali part of the list?
It's already there.
It's on the list, but it's way down there because that is not an electronics approved site. So, and it doesn't have robust solar infrastructure outside of what the Forest Service has for the lookout. So that one would kind of be a lift.
It seems like it would be pretty important because there's so many people live underneath it.
I agree, but it's one of those ones that has it has more hurdles than the rest.
And at least there's already something on Oregon Mountain.
There is something on Oregon Mountain, so that's helpful. And since I've never spoken to the alert wildfire people directly, I don't know if they have like a distance between cameras that's optimal. You know, maybe having one on Oregon Mountain is sufficient, or maybe if we had access to Bali, that one would be better, but they're really only a few miles apart. So I don't know.
Okay, so any weirdness with PG&E, who Carol said has lots and lots of cameras, that we're not a big PG&E concern? PUD, would they? But maybe I'll reach out to PG&E.
Yeah, we just need to find a contact again. Let's see.
Yeah, I don't know that there's any problem with that from that. I mean, the two that are up are not in anywhere near their service areas. And well, yeah.
They're also both on sites that are privately owned, so.
Private, okay, so,
right.
Okay,
So Picket Peak is part of PG&E's territory.
perfect.
All right, I got an asterisk by that one, Larry.
I'm kind of curious, is any of these PG&E cameras here in Trinity County, is it like a different system or is it part of the same system?
Part of the same system.
Okay, and
And
they don't
They're
have
just, they're
any,
just doing the financing in many respects, yeah.
And
they don't have any cameras in Trinity County, PG&E.
PG&E, both of the ones that are in Trinity County are PG&E cameras.
Okay,
Yes.
In other words, they provided the hardware.
thank you for clarifying that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, both of them are PG&E cameras.
So let's make sure it's on next meeting's agenda. The next,
Yeah, yeah, again, this was just intended to kind of resurrect this whole issue. It sounds like there's, again, consensus that we all want more cameras. So let's just press on and we got some, follow-up to do, determine where the hardware is going to come from. Is that free or we got to pay for it? So there's definitely some issues, questions we need to sort out. So
And a proponent, so I can get a proposal from somebody.
correct. Right. And you're okay with,
I'll do some legwork to get it started, but I'm gonna need something that I can actually
formal that you
respond
can
to. Yeah.
respond to, yeah. And that has to come from whoever it is providing the hardware, right?
But the proposal is only for Forest Service sites. There are some here that aren't Forest Service, like the one at Trinity Center. You could ask for that right now. I mean, I don't know why you have to wait for proposals for some of them.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to do the ones that I'm not responsible for, I'll tell you that much.
Right, well, that's my point. That's my point. That's my point. You could proceed with some of them right now and then submit a proposal to the Forest Service. They're not, you don't have to pick one or the other. You can do both.
We'll tease that out, Carol, and make sure the list that we submit to the Forest Service is ones that are specific to their lands and their management authority, yeah.
Tara has a project in search of a proposal. It's kind of backwards.
Well, and there are 3 that, you know, Travis was just offering he can hang them up now, so maybe those are the best 3 to
Well,
move
Ironside's
forward.
one of the 3 though.
No, there are
there are
3.
three at the
They're
top of the
actually the
list.
top 3 on the list. Those are
Oh,
private land.
Okay, yep.
2 of those are Sierra Pacific land, and one of them is tribal land in Hoopa, where I kind of have autonomy over the site. And so if I had those, we could go hang them up today.
Okay.
So what
Yeah, we gotta go
what
through
we
this
need to
list.
do is basically find out how to do the acquisition aspect of it and acquire them. Yep.
Okay.
So I'll send you that other contact.
And then maybe once you are in communication with whomever at Alert Wildfire, I mean, if I need to be the one who writes a proposal for the Forest Service sites, I'm happy to do that. You know, whatever we need to do to make this happen, because it's kind of distressing to me, because I actually suggested this to the district ranger at the time, 18 years ago. Wow.
Who was the district ranger at the time?
Oh, Joyce Anderson.
That's a minute ago.
Yeah.
That's when Joyce.
18 years ago, okay. Listen,
Travis, you beat the pilot project.
the bar is pretty low, so I think we can raise the bar a little bit here.
Appreciate that.
All right. Okay, let's wrap that one up again. Thank you, Travis, for your contribution today and presence with us. Appreciate it very much. Okay, we're gonna go rapid fire here, Tara. So you're up. Forest Service update.
Sweet, okay.
Lightning round.
Lightning round, yep.
Alrighty, I got my glasses on, we're good to go. Okay. Recreation, as many of you know, we've been working diligently in the wilderness, and then with the deep fire, we had to kind of disengage and support the deep fire. But work did continue in the Yola Bola wilderness, supported by a pack string over there. The deep fire is 89% contained. There are some pieces of that fire that are checked up in the rocks that you can't put handline around. The terrain just does not allow that. It is still staffed. We have people up there. We still have helicopters that are assigned to it. And we continue to work on that fire. So I really want to thank SPI, the Sheriff's Department, local volunteer fire departments, Carroll and as well as Coffee Creek for their help during the lightning bust and during the deep fire in particular. Fuels reduction. Work is underway with the Trinity IRSC project that treats hazardous fuels across the landscape. Right now we inspected some equipment and they've started work on the 16 road. They'll also be back out in that August fire footprint as well. Want to make sure you all know that our prescribed fire goals for this fall and spring are 3,900 acres. That's across both management units. That's considerably more. We did 1,000 this past year. So we're looking to do 3,900 this fall and spring. Pilot project, because I know somebody made a joke about it. Pilot is expected to be into a contract first quarter of 24. The Kellogg fuel break work is beginning next week. Reforestation, we've done reforestation on 400 acres, which was actually a pretty good accomplishment given the amount of snow and the weird winter. It was like no window, window open, window closed. So I was happy we got that 400 acres planted. Planning Bowerman Fuels reduction is progressing and expected to be signed the first quarter of 24. Junction City project is starting to shape up. That's a project that I got a letter from community members in and around Junction City following the monument fire, and we're working with the Watershed Center, the Forest Service, and those community members to get that project designed. High and Palm Community Risk Reduction is currently out for scoping. The scoping period was scheduled to end today, but we extended it for 2 weeks because of the fire. And the public field trip will be Friday, September 22nd. It will start at 10 a.m. And is expected to run to about 2. We're going to meet at the community center at 10. Let's see. Fiscal year 23 was funded based on the work we could accomplish under existing NEPA. As you all know, we got that $15.9 million. And then the Six Rivers folks, as well as the Shasta Trinity, we also leveraged disaster supplemental money we had. And as it turns out, we said we would get done 6,855 acres. And by the end of the fiscal year, we should have delivered on 11,900 acres. So everybody did a lot of really great work on that. And our partners have been a huge part of that as well. So thank you to those of you in the room. We will be meeting with partners and stakeholders in October to discuss values at risk. And talk about, and we'll use land tender will be part of the discussion as well. And then coming up with some priorities. I want you all to know we'll continue to emphasize shared stewardship as we work through this. Let's see. Had a great meeting with SPI out in the woods. As many of you saw in the deep fire, the contingency lines went across ownerships and went across to SPI onto Forest Service, then back onto SPI, and we did a follow-up with the forest supervisor and Keith. We went back out and looked at and felt that was a great opportunity to not only have a fire line that was on the landscape, but have a shaded fuel break that crossed both of those lines as well. So we'll be looking to incorporate that into the Highway 3 project. Let's see. I anticipate having a meeting in the field for Highway 3 this fall before we hit winter. And we'll talk about a field trip, getting that on the next field trip agenda perhaps. And I'll be getting Fish and Wildlife Service on a field trip out to High and Palm as well as Big Ranch. I want to get Christine over here when she has a minute. I guess Ryan's on, and let her, get her out on the High and Palm project, and then take her over to Big Ranch. So it'll probably be a 2-day project for her, or trip for her. Let's see, hiring. Wanted to let you all know we've hired 23 new employees, which is why I can totally beat what Joyce did on those fire cameras by a lot. I think I've got the people now that we can get that done. I had 5 started this pay period, and I want you all to know that all 5 live in Trinity County, so that was exciting. Fire hire is open until the end, till 9/29, and then our next hiring effort after this will be for forestry technicians. Again, we are struggling to get forestry technicians hired that have the skill set around the timber, marking, layout, cruising, that kind of thing. I think that's probably a fairly decent update on what we have going, but I would anticipate that, like I said, the next field trip, I think Kristen has the jump on me to get out to Route 1 and look at the South Fork Mountain that we're sharing. And then we also need to look at Highway 3. So this may be a time that I ask you all to go on more than one field trip in a month. And we'll schedule that way out in advance, if that works for you. And that's the end of my update.
Okay, any questions? Here we go, Jerry.
Tara.
Yes, sir.
The 5 Trinity County hires, did you bring them over from other agencies, or are they kind of new people in the county?
No, it's a great question. A little bit of both. So we have some people that live in the county that I want to flinch when I say that we hired Amelia, because Kelly. So Amelia's on board, and then the other 3 live in the county already. And so
I was just looking for resources. Did you add more, or kind of take existing and?
In my opinion, we added more. And then also, I'm thrilled that some of the people we're hiring are actually buying homes in the communities. And they look to be sticking around for quite a while. So things are definitely looking up as far as that goes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for Tara? Not seeing any hands up there. NRA?
Well, this is day 5, so I'm brand new here, still trying to get my feet underneath.
Sure.
Really, Tara covered the Highway 3 thing. Really, I guess are there questions that maybe I can answer before I just start throwing stuff out and reviewing things that may not need to be reviewed?
You got a question?
Oh, I was pointing at Jerry, I'm sorry. It was
Ross
kind of a,
Milano,
yeah.
Martell said that the memory said that it was supposed to be an on-the-ground meeting at the culvert to see how to deal with that. And someone was supposed to provide a plan and then tell us where we're at.
The
on
Trinity
that
Lake
trip.
hiking trail?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, basically we do need 100%, we do need a design, before Caltrans will consider it. We can take, a partial review so that if there's anything that we need to course correct, we can, we can take a look at it, so we don't have to go 100% and then, nope, that's not gonna work. You should have done
Start all
this.
over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we can take a look at, or Caltrans will take a look at partial designs as well. And then it was actually brought up, so if there's the crossing by the culvert, if it's through Caltrans, has to be 100% ADA compliant. However, an idea was broached and we need to take a look at it because it just came up of actually staying at the high water mark. And then staying, that where the permit's gonna have to come from Army Corps of Engineers. But that way, it may be a little bit more doable. Yes, there are gonna be times when it's not gonna be usable. As the lake should fill to capacity. But other than that, that might actually be more viable way of looking at it.
So when you're doing the planning with Caltrans, are they in on it at the front end? So like you said, you don't do 100% then have to
Yeah,
go
we'll
back.
bring it, yes, we would,
Yes.
yeah, just like everything, and with this, to bring them in early.
Great.
So that if we do need to make a course correction, do so.
Okay, there was a request just to get your name and email address, so I don't know if that's.
Sure, Mark Goshorn. And I put the email address on the sign in, but it's Mark, M-A-R-K dot Goshorn, Goshorn at USDA.gov, United States Department of Agriculture .government.
Good. It's in the minutes now too. So we're good.
It's there forever.
All right, any questions? Hearing none, seeing none. Six Rivers, Kristen.
Yes, I'm here. I'm
Very
gonna
good.
I'm gonna leave my camera off. So I was gonna start reporting out on the acres accomplished on the August IRSC. We have two separate contracts. One is for our area based, and we've that's been kind of slow going. That's a little bit more technical, and we've accomplished about 350 acres so far on that contract. The roadside contract is moving a little bit faster. They've kind of picked up pace, and we're at 489 acres accomplished. So that work is going well. In terms of upcoming projects, one that we're working with the RCD, within the footprint is also the County Road Hazard Tree Expansion Project. And I was very informed by hearing the discussion earlier regarding probability of mortality. So this project is where we recognize that the county road easement is so narrow. I believe it's like 25 feet. And obviously we have hazard trees that exceed that height. So we're going to help out by having a wider buffer on that. So that we're currently working with Brittany and moving forward to specialist reports using our roadside, newly signed roadside maintenance CE. For that authority. Because this is an easement and it is all Forest Service land, we don't need to worry about any other types of environmental authorities like CEQA or anything like that. So that's moving forward. The next project we're working on concurrently and getting close with specialist reports. Now, a portion of this is in Humboldt County, a small portion is in Trinity County, so it's obviously immediately adjacent to Trinity County, and within the Trinity Wildfire Crisis Landscape is our Rat Tail project. And that is a green project. So that's exciting for us to not have salvage. That's a very important factor in being able to bring these projects to a bid situation. As was pointed out by the foresters previously, there's so much salvage on the market. It's hard to even get a bid, and then our costs are so high. So that project is moving forward as well. The fire and fuels EA decision was signed, I think last week by Ted. So that's another big win for the forest. And that will enable us to do those fuels reduction projects across the forest. We still have, again, it's a programmatic, so we'll still have specialist work to do. The big lift on that is going to be heritage. We have a HIP, Heritage Implementation Plan, I think is what that stands for. I probably got that wrong. And so that's the big lift on that one to move forward. And that'll allow us to do understory burning and other non-commercial fuels reduction work. The district is also working on our burn plans. Right now we're focusing on piles mostly in the Lassix that are under our suppression repair plan from the August complex. But our goal is to segue into having a district-wide burn plan, one for piles and then one for jackpot understory burning. So we're moving towards that, hopefully next year. One of our barriers to that is staffing, and boy, it sure comes in waves. So I'm glad to hear that Tara has had some successful hiring. I've not been quite so successful. Where Mad River is a very good training grounds for folks, and I get them trained up, and then they move on to promote. So we're trying to fill a GS11 fuels planner, and was not successful on the last cert for that. So I'm just following my fallback plan, which is to have the forestry staff, to the best of their abilities, work on that. But the burn plans are particularly specific because you need to have that type 2 burn boss qualification. So we have been working with some retired folks back on the ACES program to try and get some coverage, but it's still a barrier for us. And then the last project, which Tara mentioned that we were going to have a field trip and couldn't, is our South Fork Mountain Joint fuel break. And so I just wanted to thank Randy for her fantastic presentation. That was really enjoyable and informative for me. And in that footprint, as you guys probably know, we've had the 3-9 fire. We're, I think, in like day 30 of that. And so a couple things. One, we've transitioned earlier this week to a Nevada Type 3 team, Team 2, Brian Kitchen. And they're set up in our new fire camp location on an old mill site, Forest Service land off Highway 36. And they're focusing on suppression repair right now. So I plan to have them for the full 14 days, and then we're fairly confident that it'll then turn back to the district for a Type 4. Our big issue up there, as you guys know, is that was in the route fire burn scar for the most part, and we've just had a tremendous snag load up there. So while we were able to cut a lot of old standing snags, now, as Tara mentioned, you take a vertical problem and turn it into a horizontal problem. And so that's what we have going on right now. There's been some chipping. We did some piling. That's going to have to cure. We will get those burned. But talking with the team this morning, I think we are going to move to a horizontal or a tub grinder and try to get some of those larger fuels, those 1,000-hour fuels abated to the best of our abilities. But that will be an interesting workload for us to consider for our joint fuel break. And with that, I actually had a question for Randy. I was wondering what that fire, how that will affect the land tender analysis there, and if, how we incorporate that, and if those fire effects would help us validate any of the inputs that is driving land tender.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask the Vibrant Planet staff about their kind of refresh rate, because they're actively updating land tender on a schedule, so that their synthetic LiDAR surface, it stays up to date. But there's still a period of time where that's in transition. I had imagined that the fire could be seen as a distinct management area, and maybe the analysis won't be up to date until they refresh the synthetic surface. But if we kind of take that into consideration and tell the system this area has distinctively different stuff going in there, might be a way to work around the change condition due to the fire. So yeah, I think that's an interesting, I have questions around just how, I know the information's out there. Vibrant Planet's been really easy to work with, but there's so much information on the back end of the system. I'm still learning it day in, day out, and hopefully going to be able to answer these questions much more readily as I get to work with the system.
Kristen, are you going to request the ravage for the whole South Fork complex?
That sounds like a good idea. and thanks to Shasta Trinity for managing that fire. I really appreciated that. It's now come back to the Six Rivers. So again, great teamwork with our sister forest there. That was greatly appreciated. And then just on that same note, the forest closure order that's been in place, the plan is, and what I've been told is that, and we have it in front of OGC, is our closure order, it will still be in place, but we are shrinking it so that the public can travel Route 1 over the 3N10 to High and Palm. So we're going to allow that travel route. I understand that Shasta Trinity I think today is lifting the closure order on their side. So that'll be open. But obviously with the safety issues and that narrow travel corridor on Route 1, we're going to keep that closed for at least another 30 days is what we have for the order. And so I believe that goes into effect at midnight tonight. So we'll have some additional security and stuff out there. And then, as you all know, deer season for rifle opens on Saturday. So we're expecting some impacts up there. So I guess I'll say end of report unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Kristen? Thank you, Kristen, by the way, for that update. Any questions? Seeing none, hearing none, we will move on to BLM updates. You still with us, Jennifer?
Yes, I am. I just had to get back to the right screen. Sorry. I don't know that I have a whole lot to update on that's new or has changed. So our resource management plan, the draft EIS, we're hoping to get the Federal Register notice published at the end of September. So fingers crossed that works. And that will trigger our public scoping period on the draft EIS. We're targeting to hopefully have 2 virtual and 2 in-person public meetings. Those are tentatively scheduled for the end the last week of October and the first week of November. So more to come when we get those dates firmed up, but there'll be a in-person public meeting in Arcata, one in Reading, and then 2 virtuals is the plan. So that's been most of our focus. I'm trying to get that draft document wrapped up and out the door for public comment. We did have a field tour earlier this week for the Browns Mountain project to look at a sample mark. I'm assuming that went well. There was people here obviously in the room on that tour. I obviously was not. So looking to get that sale marked and then hopefully out for bid relatively soon. And then we will be kind of shifting as the weather turns into fuels work and prescribed fire. So kind of starting to make that shift from the summer season, hopefully into the fall sooner than later. And I think that's about it. I'm sure there's more, but it's been a week.
All right, thank you, Jennifer. Any questions for Jennifer? Right, not seeing any. So moving on to other items, partner updates, Recreation Committee. Who can give us a report on that?
Carol wasn't available. We had our meeting, wasn't prepared to actually make a statement about that one. I don't know, Carol, was there anything on that agenda that you wanted me to touch on?
I guess, what was the update for Minersville?
My understanding, I don't know, you may have a report out on that, Mark, but my understanding was that they were at a 30%. They had met on site with the actual engineer, and that they were in development of the plan. They felt like everything was basically on target timing wise. So there wasn't a whole lot of discussion about that. With that, it's progressing, and there's movement, so it's moving forward. We already sort of talked a little bit about the other major topic was the Lake Trail, and we kind of already covered that piece, I think. So,
and I guess for the Bowerman Barn Foundation, Pat was saying that the Forest Service was requesting additional funds for engineering.
Yes, looks like we did put in a request for next year's budget for that one.
Okay. That was all Pat told me.
yeah, I think that was, by and large, that was it.
I apologize.
Sure.
I have a meeting with the boss. I'm late for now.
Yep. All right, you gotta go.
Don't worry, I got a ride. I just said the battalion's coming to pick me up.
Oh, okay.
All right, thank you, Tara.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tara.
All right.
Good to see you guys.
RCD.
Bethany, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sorry about that. My main thing is I'm developing a community wildfire defense grant proposal, which will be for private lands adjoining the Big Ranch project. We have a kind of community interest and partner planning meeting for that this coming week. So if anyone is not currently on that list and wants to participate, I know I have people coming from the forest as well as from those communities downriver, but happy to send that invite out to anyone else. You can reach out to me directly and I'll put my email in the chat. Other than that, we're continuing a proposal with the Sierra Nevada Conservancy for the Trinity Roads Partnership in partnership with Keith at SPI. That will be roadside treatments that are complementary to a lot that the forest is doing in the North Lake on the SPI portions of a lot of those checkerboard roads. And on the implementation side, we're continuing work out in the Lake Forest plantations and planning to do a lot of work in the Weaverville Community Forest over the winter. As soon as the WCF Phase 2 Fuels and Rec is signed, as well as assisting on the technical support side with initial recon on Big Ranch and with layout, cruising, and painting on the BLM Oregon Mountain Project.
Great. Thanks, Bethany. To sort of supplement that too, some of that funding, some of that work that Bethany was just mentioning was basically on our stewardship agreement, which is the support that we're providing for the wildfire crisis strategy. Beyond that, we've been working both on Six Rivers and Shasta Trinity side, doing road work within the, I believe mostly within the August complex footprint, if I'm not mistaken. So did you want to talk, just to give this group a little bit of information about the work that you've been doing with the evacuation route planning and how that sort of had any lessons we've learned, you know, and kind of how things went with regard to the deep fire and because I know that there was sort of some shifting and some edits and things that were being requested, like what our role in that is.
Sure. So evacuation route planning or evacuation zones, or both?
Both.
Okay. Yeah. So I have been doing status updates for the evacuation zone viewer. I did some application updates. Some folks had commented that they wanted to see roads underneath, so we put the roads on there. But how that works is that the sheriff's office will reach out to me, and I will make the updates online to the status viewer, and that goes right to the Office of Emergency Services. And it also goes out to Code Red. And so I get directions directly from the sheriff's office in order to do that. So I did several updates, and then we updated it to warnings, and then there are different statuses. I'm not sure right now. I think there is only one zone that is actually still in a warning. As far as, we also got descriptions put into all the evacuation zones. So we have the actual information about the areas that are in there now. So that was something that was a work in progress that we needed to have done for a little while. So that's completed. As far as evacuation routes go, what I've been doing for those is I've been identifying the actual evacuation routes in each zone and assigning a zone number to that, and that is a work in progress right now. There is still some fine tuning of the actual areas. What we want to do is we want to assign a north, south, east, and a west to each of the routes in each of the zones. So that's partially, it's not partially completed. It's about 75% completed, but I have to finish some of the quality control on that to make sure that everything is within the boundaries. It gets a little bit technical. I don't want to burden you guys with that. But that's where we're at with that.
Thanks, Denise.
Sure.
And just to sort of, I guess, piggyback on that, Code Red is like a free app that was being utilized when there were certain areas in the North Lake that were basically had evacuation warnings and things of that nature during deep fire. And so those, you know, people that have the Code Red app basically get, you know, as I understand it, the sheriff's office basically like institutes warnings basically through the evacuation zones, and then that gets shared out through Code Red as one of the avenues through which that gets to the public. And then once that happens, you get like notifications about those warnings, and you can look at it on a map and see, you know, what areas are being impacted and things of that nature. It's also an online, like you can go onto the website and look at that information as well. The only other thing that I would, I guess, just for the sake of time, that I wanted to bring up with the group was that, again, with regard to upcoming work that we're going to be doing with the forests through our stewardship agreement for the wildfire crisis strategy. working with Nick Goulet at the Watershed Center, and the county, the CAO, Trent Tuthill, and the environmental specialist that they have on staff, David Kolbeck, we're attempting to stand up and support the reinstatement of the Natural Resources Division. Used to be under the Planning Department. We think it's probably going to be basically under the CAO's office, you know, as we're working forward. But the intent will be to have basically staffers there, particularly David Kolbeck, if everything works out the way we want it to go, as essentially an ID team lead for the third-party NEPA projects that both the Watershed Center and the RCD will be having in support of that wildfire crisis strategy, so that, you know, we'll be providing as organizationally additional specialist capacity. He'll be able to basically take, you know, multiple projects and sort of be leading those projects through this, you know, the CE process as we're moving into the next couple field seasons, and that's all but likely to happen at this point. Like, we think we're moving forward with that, and I think it's going to be a good way to basically allow our internal capacities as organizations to basically support that both financially and with capacity, but having somebody that's sort of that go-to that can basically take it from, you know, inception to, you know, across the finish line. So I think that's going to help speed things up while not overburdening either of our staffs. So I just wanted to sort of report that out as good progress as we're moving forward. So I think that would be it for the RCD.
On the evacuation stuff,
Yeah.
there was a lengthy discussion at the Fire Safe Council about accessing the link. So when people are in high drama moments, they don't have to go to pull down menus and go to another link. Has that been kind of facilitated? So if somebody gets to a site, there's a big link flashing at you, just to make it easier.
Well, currently, the way we have it set up is we have 3 different applications, and we did talk about how it would be ideal to have it streamlined into one central place that people can go to. So the way that was built was, it was sort of based on need. First, they wanted to have a thing to show where your zones were, and then I had a request to build something for people to look at their cell phones, and then I had a request for a wildfire evacuation viewer. So it might not be ideal right now that there are 3 places to go, and we think it would be a good idea to merge all of those into one and make it a little more user-friendly. But right now, because we're in the middle of fire season, we decided not to make any changes right now, but to put that on the table for discussion for maybe the next season, and if there is funding to do that. As it is now, I built a document so people can use that to hopefully be able to navigate the applications that we have built a little easier. And I'd like to also take that document. It was on social media. I don't know if you have a chance to see that, but I want to put that in the viewer so you can click on that. And I'm happy to talk to you after the meeting if you want to take a look at anything online and show me where you have specific recommendations. I will see if we can incorporate that and make it easier.
It would just seem to me to be easy that if you went to either RCD website, OES, Forest Service, that link for evacuation all goes to the same app/viewer. So people aren't having to duplicate things, that's all.
Okay, I will make that recommendation. I'll take a note and bring it up in the next meeting.
It's kind of really centralized.
Understood. I agree with you.
All right, and just one other thing, just to sort of hint. I mean, Jennifer Mata hinted at a field tour that we had yesterday, up to have a look at the Oregon Mountain Timber Sale. That I think was a very productive meeting. We had members of the steering committee present. We kind of walked all over that hillside. and got to look at some of the sample marks that Jess Paoli had, the current forester for the BLM had marked up. And we did some marking on the ground, and as they're being certainly a little bit more aggressive, I would say, with the mark that they're advocating for, but we are moving forward, and I think there's some general, I'd say loose consensus, and Bob Morris might have something else to say about that, but I think that it's going to be a good sale, and I walked away from that being pretty optimistic that thing will float and pay for itself out of the bids. So I think that's a win for us. So,
All right.
I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much, Kelly. Anybody from the Watershed Center can give a report? Xander?
Well, I'll try not to keep folks too long. I did want to give an update on the Bowerman project because I got a question from Carol earlier in the week. We did have a bit of a pause during NSO, the Northern Spotted Owl survey season, just because, it's a big undertaking to do the surveys across the two forests, and our wildlife staff was pretty tapped out with that. So our hope is that we can continue to sort of schedule things so that we're not landing right in the middle of NSO season with our analysis on projects. So that is something we're going to endeavor to do better. But now we're back working on completing all of our specialist reports and the decision memo by the end of October, and are working with the Forest Service to get the review that we need done. We're working under the same deadlines that Tara shared on that third-party NEPA that we're supporting the forest with. At the same time, we have forestry staff that are working on the layout of the Bowerman sale, and Xander Winter is our forester on that project and coordinating the field work with our forestry crew manager, Heather Murphy, who is both born and bred here in Trinity County, Xander and Heather. So they're doing a great job out there. Then when it comes to some other big news, we applied for a forest health grant earlier in the year. It was awarded, and now it's been executed. And the forest health grant covers supporting the joint fuel break on South Fork Mountain, working with Trinity Timberlands, which was the big old in-holding on South Fork Mountain, coming down Pelletrew Ridge with treatments on Forest Service land and Trinity Timberland land into High and Palm, working with some High and Palm landowners, and then going back towards the pilot project with even just roadside brushing. If I have no other NEPA, I was just looking for ways to connect it all together. So we'll connect to the pilot project, and then from the pilot project back onto private land treatments in Hayfork. And one of the things that's going to potentially come out of that effort, working with Trinity Timberlands, we're likely going to try to do what's called Cal VTP, which is sort of the big environmental analysis that Cal Fire did to do fuel reduction treatments. And you can do what's called a PSA, and sorry, I'm not really remembering what the acronym is, but you can tier to their programmatic analysis that they've done to hopefully streamline some of your big scale reoccurring fuel reduction treatments. And we're hoping to cover something like 20,000 acres across Trinity Timberlands and in the greater High and Palm area. And at the same time, we have a federal grant that we were able to receive, a community wildfire defense grant, the same one that Bethany mentioned for the private lands around Big Ranch, that was awarded for High and Palm. It hasn't quite been executed yet. It's a brand new grant program that state and private forestry through the Forest Service is standing up this year. And what I've heard is they actually started maybe on the East Coast with getting those grants or those grants awarded. And I think now they're trying to tackle California. So that's why, you know, it's hard to stand up programs like that. You know, they're distributing a lot of money. So that one for High and Palm, we're looking for ways to streamline the compliance across the Forest Health Grant, and the CWDG is the acronym for that one. So that it's one effort, and implementation will likely start next year on that. So yeah, that's sort of, we have so many other things going on, but I respect everybody's time and certainly don't want to keep the group. Although I do feel like as a W, we are often left in a situation where we're only talking about the biggest news and not really giving a lot of details about all the other stuff we're involved in. So anyway, thank you for the opportunity to share some information.
You can send out emails of all the details through Jim and Kelly, you know, for updates.
Yeah.
Well, there has been Kelly and I kind of kicked this around too. The other concept here, it's not revolutionary. I've certainly seen it in other forums that I've been involved in, but we would ask all the agency partners to actually provide a written report, and then just kind of, you know, in advance of the meeting, and then you hit the highlights here. So at least, you know, you have the opportunity to kind of give more depth in terms of what's going on, and we all have a chance to read it. And then you kind of just pick, you know, kind of cherry pick at the meeting so we can explore that if we all think that's a good idea.
So moved.
All right, there we go. Very good. Okay, moving on to concluding business. Public input. Sitting on facilitation team, we got anything, Kelly? We got some follow-up to do, I know that.
I guess the only thing that I was gonna bring up, obviously, it's been suggested to me that I look into connecting with the Rancheria to see what the technical facility is with their conference room down there, because it holds more bodies.
Yep.
And allegedly can do much the same thing as we're doing here. I think there's a desire for, when we've got a lot of topics like this, to have people get together. You know, as long as, as long as our Zoom connection is stable. So I'm going to be looking into that probably for the November meeting.
We utilize it for the land tender training, so if you would like to talk, it was a very easy process. It was a great room. The internet was great. So yeah, whatever I can do to help. Yeah.
Perfect. That'd be great. I think that was basically it for right now.
All right. Okay, field tour planning. Looks like we got South Fork on the.
I guess I wanted to check in with Kristen and Randy to see if we still wanted to go ahead and push forward, since we had to defer the August meeting to, will October 20th work for you both to go ahead and make that happen?
I'm nodding my head.
Kristen?
What was that date?
October 20th.
October 20th would be the third Friday, the standing tour, field tour date.
You're getting me right before duck season. On the 21st. Yeah, hopefully I'm healthy by then. We can pencil that in.
Okay. And it sounded like Tara may have some other and more expedited need too, but we would double down and figure out another date for that one.
Yep.
So, but unless if you guys feel like you can pull it off, we can do that. Otherwise, we would probably defer to that. But
we were ready for August, so
let's go ahead and do that.
Yep.
Okay. Then yeah, the additional one will be Tara's. So we'll be reaching out to folks as soon as we have more information about that.
Okay. Agenda building. We still got the winter flow release item there, and then
I know that they just had they just posted something out of the Indian Creek Lodge that was related to that, and had somebody come out and speak to that. I don't know if the group would prefer something to that effect here, because we had talked about it previously. I can certainly arrange that.
Definitely with Mike.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we feel like that's still a valid thing that we would like to talk about and hear about, then I can make that happen.
Okay.
Any opinions to the contrary of that?
Well, it's not just the winter flows. I think it's the minimum lake levels too.
Correct. Those two are kind of tied together.
Minimum lake level.
They could respond to the letter in the paper, that'd be great.
Okay, I will get with Mike Dixon about that and see if I can't get a commitment for November.
All right, and I know we wanted to bring back the alert wildfire for next meeting, just to give an update on where we're at. Hopefully we've made some progress. Knock off a couple of those for.
Yeah, if you're able to connect with
Yep.
them and we can get the camera purchases and recording of where the cameras by the next meeting.
Exactly, yeah,
That'd be
so we're
amazing.
gonna push hard and make something happen on that front.
And you're gonna be submitting the application?
If that's the process, the alert.
Yeah, we just need to.
We need just one body.
Yep.
Yeah, if
and
they
then-
say, yes, you as the internet provider at these sites, we want you to, and, you know, we already have infrastructure and special use permits at these sites, if they want me to submit it.
That'd probably be the best. And then again, with the, just the actual material, just list out who's gonna be in charge of it, who's gonna be managing it, and just for it.
So is there a format for the proposal that you would suggest, or is it?
It's a real simple.
Okay. We'll
Application.
work with Travis and get something together.
Yeah, if you have it, I don't have it in hand with me, obviously, but you can get home and I can get you the right forms.
Cool.
Should be pretty familiar with it.
Painfully familiar with that.
You already know. You already know what wants to say.
Any other agenda items for next meeting that anyone's got right?
No, bike trail, put it on there.
Okay, keep the bike trail on there, yep. Yep.
Well, this was an incredibly ambitious agenda today.
Yeah, it was
and
we keep everyone with patience and perseverance with us, hanging in there. I know we've lost a few. Thank you to our presenters as well. Very informative, good dialogue, good conversation, as we had anticipated. Yeah, good stuff.
Great.
With that, any final thoughts, comments? All right.
Good meeting.
It's a wrap. All right, thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Participant. Yeah, we can be probably a little more ambitious.
Hey, these meetings used to be 5 hours.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
And there are units that are.
I got here in September of '90.
And we're wondering, it is treatment
So
on Forest
RCD board
Service
meetings at
land.
that night. They didn't
We're
start till
hoping to,
7.
you know, manage
We'd go to midnight. I mean, literally, we went to midnight. That was with Joe Simpson
about
and
all the
Lackey,
issues.
ran
We
into
looked up the
Geneva, the
parcels
volleyball.
that-
you know.
And the Forest Service
Yeah.
does own the trees.
Cause they were
there.
just, not a lot of structure. It was
RCD.
kind of like a real loose,
I suggest,
you know, and people would get all fired up about
as much of a plan as you can come up with is delivered.
No, that's what he had.